Blue Dragon Emperor, Lord of Thunder. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 1. A newly hatched blue dragon is no better than a pig. My real name. Long End Oregon Ferenga. Angaston Morn. After roaring to the sky, Long End lowered his head, his confused pupils gradually focused, and he saw the sky blue scales, claws, and eggshells that were faintly reflecting a little light in the darkness. Am I traveling through time? So a semi-trailer truck can really open the door to another world? The shadow of being run over by the huge tires made Long End's brain still aching and confused. I should have found a steamroller to scam me, because that's the entrance to the second dimension. Long End, who was lying in the eggshell, shook his heavy head uncomfortably and lost his balance and overturned the eggshell. Long End, who woke up a little in panic, found that he didn't feel any pain. At least it's thick-skinned, so it's not so easy to be hit and killed by a semi-trailer again. After complaining, Long End felt that as his consciousness became clearer, the originally weak hunger in his stomach became more and more obvious, making him feel like a sand god who had been hungry for more than half a month, eating half a bowl of noodles and half a bottle of water every day. Long End felt that he was dizzy with hunger. It's terrible. I want to order takeout. What's more terrible is that Long End actually felt that the eggshell in front of him exuded a fragrance, and when he was dizzy with hunger, the fragrance was even more fragrant than barbecued fried chicken. This thing, can it really be eaten? Long End decided to trust the instinct and intuition of living things. After swallowing his saliva wildly, he stretched out his claws to break off a small piece of eggshell, closed his eyes, and threw it into his mouth. Crunch, crunch. HMM. Unexpectedly delicious? Question mark? Crunchy, chicken flavor. Long End pounced on the eggshell and devoured it like a chicken flavored cracker. As the deadly hunger slowly disappeared, Long End felt that his brain, which had just woken up, became groggy again. After chewing the last piece of cookie while forcing himself to sleep, Long End finally fell to the ground with his stomach turned over, snoring unconsciously, and fell asleep. How long have I slept? Long End, who had slightly gotten rid of his sleepiness, had a headache. He had just crossed over to a strange world and a strange environment, and he had fallen asleep for an unknown amount of time. During this period, he was afraid that any wild boar could have stabbed him. Long End, how could you be so depraved? The second day, sleep. The third day, sleep. What awakened Long End was the familiar and deadly hunger. No, I'm going to die of hunger. Long End felt that he could eat a cow now. Although he was hungry, Long End found that his body was not weak at all, but full of strength. Why does this cave feel smaller? Long End looked around. Although the light was weak, he could still see the things in the cave clearly. This terrifying night vision ability seemed to be innate to him. After carefully recalling the cave he saw when he first opened his eyes, Long End realized that it was not the cave that had become smaller, but he had become bigger. Long End, shocked face. A newly hatched little cun. A chicken can gain 10 times its weight and become several times larger in a month. Long End knew this. But when this happened to him, it was completely different. Did I sleep for half a year? He couldn't figure it out, didn't understand. Long End temporarily put his terrifying growth rate behind him and looked at the only stone platform with human traces in the cave. The square stone platform is 1 meter high, with a pit in the middle, surrounded by many strange patterns. Long End was placed there when he was still an egg. Long End's eyes were instantly attracted by the 4 crystals at the 4 corners of the stone platform. The 4 crystals emitted red, yellow, blue, and green glimmers respectively. The reflection of the scales that Long End saw at first sight came from this. Long End swore that he was definitely not a money grubber, and his heart was not moved by the glittering. But why couldn't he move his eyes away? Carefully stretching out his nails to pry out the 4 crystals, Long End held the crystals with his claws and put them on his head. The hard scales stuck to the crystals. Long End took a deep breath of happiness, his face full of intoxication. Even the hunger in his stomach was relieved a lot. Long End picked out the blue crystal and licked it with his tongue, resisting the urge to swallow the crystal in one gulp. Beautiful stones can't be eaten as food. It's better to find something to fill your stomach. The extreme hunger gradually occupied the high ground of reason, causing Long N's IQ to drop off a cliff. Well, eggshells are fragrant and can be eaten. I feel that this beautiful stone is also fragrant. Is it actually edible? The remaining reason tried to stop Long N's somewhat whimsical idea. How could a stone as big as half a palm be swallowed? Burp. After hesitating for less than half a second, Long N threw the cyan crystal into his mouth. There was no expected rubbing of the mouth and throat. After the cyan crystal entered Long N's mouth, it seemed to have become liquid food that was easy to absorb and slid directly into his stomach. A warm feeling spread from the stomach to the whole body. Long N opened his big mouth full of fangs and yawned, his eyelids drooping uncontrollably. Long N used the last second of sobriety to pull the remaining 3 crystals under his body and fell asleep again. This time he slept more peacefully than the last time. Long N. Annoyed, Long N was about to spit on his own depravity, but his eyes suddenly became stunned. This hole has shrunk by half. Well, it's not that the hole has shrunk, but that it has grown again. But it's ridiculous to grow twice as long after sleeping. In the past, Long N, who was either eating or sleeping, finally twisted his neck and head to look at his body. Tightened hard scales as blue and shining as the sea, strong and powerful muscular limbs, thick and tough membrane wings gathered on the back, slender and flexible tail covered with a bone layer and a ferocious barb at the end. All this shows that I was hit by a semi-trailer truck and reincarnated into a dragon in another world. After silently saying I hope my brother will take good care of my parents and don't feel too sad for me, Long N just wanted to shout woohoo excitedly. No, woohoo is the call of a golden dragon. I'm a blue dragon. No, that's not right. Only Chinese golden dragons call it that. No wonder he grew so fast by eating eggshells and stones. The transparent crystal in his hand that was emitting a faint light was probably something like magic crystal. Long N, who often reads fantasy novels on the End Novel website, has some understanding of these things. Magic crystals are good treasures for dragons. They can be used as treasures to decorate caves. The elemental force field created by the gathered magic crystals can also promote the physical and mental health of dragons. The most direct and rough way to use it is to stuff it into your mouth. The powerful elemental affinity of dragons allows them to directly digest and absorb the magic crystals that are hard and crystalline under normal conditions. For a newly born baby dragon, magic crystals are as tonic as 1,000-year-old mountain ginseng. Just one magic crystal made Long N grow to more than 4 meters. Long N could feel that there was still a lot of residual energy flowing in his body. After digesting this energy, his body length would definitely exceed 5 meters. So it's not that I like shiny things, it's the dragon instinct at work. Long N drooled and muttered to himself. I can't eat anymore. The rest can be saved for sleeping. As a giant dragon, how can there be no treasure in the dragon's nest? After putting the 3 magic crystals away, Long N suddenly came to his senses. No, didn't I just hatch? Where are the dragon father and mother? Where is my dragon heritage? Aren't blue dragons very social and united? Some blue dragons even have a lifelong monogamy to hatch dragon eggs and raise dragon cubs together, unlike other 5-colored dragons that will expel grown-up dragon cubs. Could it be that I became an orphan after reincarnating as a dragon? This is not a cultivation novel. The tangled Long N decided to go out to find food first. He was hungry again. Please collect and update steadily. Chapter 2, Disrupted Meal. After turning several corners in the cave, Long pushed away the huge rock that blocked the cave entrance. The dazzling sunlight shone on Long's scales, and Long's pupils shrank slightly to adjust. The change in light had no effect on the powerful dragon, even though he was still a cub. The blue cloudless sky, the vast forest, and the strong wind blowing in the sky. Long stood in front of the cave entrance on the cliff, and felt relaxed and happy. The blue sky and the sea are the favorites of blue dragons. They can use them to blend into the environment, and then hunt those prey who did not notice them before they died. Long controlled the muscles on his back, propped up his dragon wings, and let the tough wing membrane flutter in the strong wind. Long didn't think much, and instinctively took a few steps to jump. The manic wind whistled, as if to celebrate Long, but it also respectfully surrendered to his flapping dragon wings. The strong wind lifted Long's huge body and carried him through the forest and river under the drive of his wings. After flying enough, Long, feeling extremely happy, landed in a green area in the forest. He suppressed his excitement for his first flight and began to plan his first hunt. Because of his unconscious dragon power, Long always scared the prey and made them flee in a hurry before he even got close to them. He finally managed to control the release of his dragon power, but when he got close to the prey, he was betrayed by his gem-like blue scales. The blue in the forest was too conspicuous. As a blue dragon, he should have launched a surprise attack from the sky, but Long, who was born of a mother, but not raised by a mother, didn't know. Long, who had gathered his breath, tried to lower his body as much as possible, and moved forward on tiptoe. Several white-backed deer leisurely lowered their heads to eat fresh buds and leaves, but one of them stopped eating, in turn to observe the surroundings, so that they could ensure the safety of the deer. But they never found Long, even though Long had lurked 5 meters away. In their sight, there was a thorny bush in Long's direction. There were no tender buds or berries. They were not tasty and there was no need to pay attention to them. This was an ability that Long had discovered by accident not long ago. Blue dragons could directly rely on their thoughts to construct some simple illusions in the air, like a mirage. Relying on this trick, Long finally got close to his prey. The white-backed deer that took turns to be on guard finally realized something was wrong and uttered a sharp cry from their noses. They were discovered. Long retracted part of his spirit that was maintaining the illusion and instantly locked onto the young deer that was closest to him and the most panicked. His limbs were always tense and burst out with great strength. Long flew out like an arrow from a bow, and the powerful force left 4 deep claw marks on the ground. No, it's still a little bit off. Seeing that he was about to miss by a hair's breadth, Long flapped his wings, and a gust of wind pushed him to speed up again, and he crashed into the panicked white-backed deer. Long looked at the white-backed deer whose bones were broken and whose mouth and nose were bleeding after being hit by his ferocious horns, and he raised his head and roared excitedly, "Woohoo!" Long began to eat voraciously without caring about the image of the dragon clan. The bloody raw deer meat did not have the bloody smell he imagined. In the taste buds of dragons, raw deer meat tasted pretty good. But Long always felt that something was missing. He felt that he should do something with these uncooked meats. The chewed deer leg bones crossed Long's throat. It did not cut Long's strong muscles, but made Long feel a dry itch. Cough cough cough, cough. A mouthful of bright blue plasma turned into thunder and sprayed out from Long's huge mouth, electrocuting the white-backed deer in front of him, causing its skin to be torn and burnt black. Long's eyes lit up. Is this the thunder dragon breath of the blue dragon? Before starting to hunt, Long tried to spit dragon breath, but he had no clue and failed. He once doubted that the giant dragons in this world did not have such a thing as dragon breath. Long tried to recall the feeling of being stuck in the throat. At the junction of the throat and trachea in the chest, an organ buried between the internal organs and muscles was smoothly pulled, and a manic force rushed into Long's throat amid the tense muscles. Long turned his head, and the thunder spewed out of his mouth swept across the big trees and bushes beside him. Trees as thick as bowls broke and fell down, and thicker trees also exploded with deep wounds and sawdust splashed. The instant heat of the thunder ignited the sawdust and bushes. Cough 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 cough. Long coughed dryly and exhaled twice in a row. The plasma in the dragon's breath crop made Long's still tender throat feel dry and uncomfortable, and his voice became a little hoarse and majestic. Cough. I guess my throat hasn't adapted yet. It should be fine after a few more developments. Long was very satisfied with the damage caused by his dragon's breath. He waved his dragon's tail casually, extinguished the burning bushes a few times, and continued to eat happily. Under the cooking of the violent thunder, the charred skin of the venison was crispy and the flesh inside was hot, but the heating time was very short, so it was still tender and juicy. The link that was vaguely missing from the previous meal was finally made up, and the deliciousness of the venison instantly increased by at least 3 levels, and Long became more and more happy. Opening his big mouth full of blood and fangs, Long breathed a sigh of satisfaction. Although he was not full, at least he got rid of the hunger that was threatening his life. And Long believed that, if he succeeded once, he would succeed the second time. At worst, a breath of thunder from a distance could always kill one or two unlucky guys and process them by the way. Long N, hiding in the illusion again, moved on tiptoe. In front of him, a little white-backed deer was jumping and following its mother. It was born young and had never experienced the dangers of this world. It would run away from time to time to study the insects that came out of the soil and the tiny flowers on the bushes, and then reluctantly jumped back at the call of the mother deer. The cute little deer did not arouse any pity or love in Long N. The 5-colored evil dragon did not have such a thing. Long N only had the mother and daughter bowl in his eyes. With the dragon's breath brewing in his mouth, Long N was ready to sweep the whole family of white-backed deer. Suddenly, a sharp explosion came from not far away, and the frightened deer quickly launched and rushed into the dense bushes in a blink of an eye. Fuck. Long N turned his head and rushed to the direction of the explosion. If you don't let me eat the deer, I will eat you. In a charred empty space created by a high temperature explosion, 3 fat and tall hill giants waved their thick wooden sticks furiously, and a group of goblins holding wooden sticks and branches ran around in panic behind the hill giants. In front of the hill giants, there was a spherical barrier that flashed with lightning from time to time, and there were 2 thin figures vaguely visible inside. Tina, as soon as the shield dissipates, run east, return to the border of Barlan, and immediately go south to the Principality of Sidon to find the Silver Iris family. Aunt Rose is now the Countess of Silver Iris, and she will protect the last bloodline of the Lionheart family. The handsome blonde boy looked tired, and his eyes were red, but his tone was still firm and unquestionable, without any fear or cowardice. Tina, a blonde girl with a similar face to the boy, couldn't stop her tears from flowing, but she bit her lips and said, "Ryan, I will definitely let the Lionheart flag hang over Carter Castle again. I will definitely let the enemies of the Lionheart get the punishment they deserve. If you don't survive, I will cut off their heads and bury them under the gate of Carter Castle to trample them forever. At any cost." Ryan stared at his sister with red eyes. He knew his sister's determination and the meaning behind "at any cost," but he did not persuade his sister to give up revenge. The Lionheart family will never retreat and escape. Even if there is only one bloodline left, they will do their best to revive the glory of the Lionheart. This is the family motto established by the ancestor of the Lionheart family when he established the family in Iron and Blood 1600 years ago. Chapter 3, The First Pot of Gold. Long N, who pinched a bush and put it on his body through the illusion, silently looked at the scene in front of him. Long N heard the conversation between the 2 little brats in the electrical barrier very clearly. Although he couldn't understand, he could feel their resolute tone. He had slowly moved to a position less than 5 meters away from the 2, but they didn't notice it at all. It seems that the noise just now was caused by these 2 little brats. Although Long N wanted to eat the culprit who prevented him from eating deer, he still had no appetite for humanoid creatures, so Long N decided to let them go. However, the other 3 tall creatures in front of him, Long N's eyes swept towards the 3 hill giants, and a sense of disgust and hatred arose in his heart for no reason. The war between giants and dragons lasted for an unknown period of time in ancient times. The deep hatred is truly ingrained in the DNA, but it has nothing to do with me. I don't even have the heritage of a dragon except my real name. Long N stepped back, ready to stay out of trouble and stay alive first. The tallest of the hill giants raised his nose and looked at Long N in doubt. Then he picked up a big stone and threw it at Long N. Fuck. Long N turned his head to avoid the stone, and the illusion on his body was not maintained for a while, revealing Long N's beautiful blue scales. Seeing this, the hill giants all turned around and stared at Long N, making unclear giant language from their mouths and noses, as if they were cursing, and as if they were discussing how to kill the young blue dragon in front of them. Ryan and Tina were ecstatic and had a glimmer of hope. Although the blue dragon is a 5-colored evil dragon, it is not as arrogant and irritable as the red dragon, nor as vicious and evil as the green dragon, nor as shameless and cruel as the black dragon. In fact, the blue dragon is a relatively lawful and principled creature. Researchers believe that this may be related to the social nature of the blue dragon. Under normal circumstances, they are the only 5-colored dragons that live in the same territory with their relatives. This means that the blue dragon in front of him is likely to negotiate, unlike the 3 stupid hill giants who only want to eat their meat. After being injured by their spell scrolls, they are more likely to want to eat their meat paste. Honorable blue dragon, I ask you to save our lives from the hill giants. We are willing to dedicate our treasures and knowledge to you. Long N turned his head and glanced at the blonde boy who was shouting loudly, with a puzzled look in his eyes. What is this unfortunate child shouting? Seeing that Long N ignored him, Ryan turned to repeat it in a majestic language with ups and downs. Now Long N understood. Although this unfortunate child didn't know where he learned the dragon language grammar and the tone was wrong, Long N still understood what he meant. Paying money to buy life. As a noble dragon, how can you be moved by money? If you do things for money, wouldn't you become a low-class thug? Question mark? Well, I'm a dragon who is always willing to help others without asking for anything in return. But if you insist on giving me tens of thousands of gold coins and a few boxes of gems, I will not refuse. Ever since he was discovered by the hill giants, Long N knew that there was no way to end it peacefully. Even if he could fly away, most hill giants live in groups. When they go back and report that there is a little blue dragon, he will inevitably continue to run away. In the worst case, if a hill giant wizard appears, he is afraid that he will not be able to escape, even if he wants to, unless he flies for several days and nights and completely escapes from this area. But Long N is completely in the dark about this world and does not know where to run. The 3 hill giants are just 3 meters tall, and they have just reached adulthood. They certainly do not have much combat experience, and ordinary hill giants do not have magic abilities. For Long N, even if he cannot defeat them, there will be no danger, so it is a good opportunity to test his combat power. The hill giant raised a thick wooden stick and rushed up with snot and saliva. Long N dodged the thrown stones, pounds to the side, and after pulling away, he flapped his dragon wings and flew into the air. The young hill giant was somewhat at a loss when facing Long N, who was flying into the air. If there were giants who had hunted real dragons here, they would throw the thick wooden sticks in their hands above the head of the real dragon at the moment when the real dragon flapped its wings, so as to intercept the real dragon from taking off. But it was too late. Long N flew low over the head of the hill giant, stretched out his dragon claws to try to cut the hill giant's neck, but was hit by the swinging wooden stick, which made his claws numb. It was a peck between 2 chickens. Long N saw that he could not get any good results in close combat, so he immediately climbed above the tree canopy and flew out of the sight of the hill giant with an acceleration. Ryan and Tina. This blue dragon seems to have run away. The 5-colored dragon is really unreliable. The hill giant also jumped around in a rage. Suddenly, the sound of a strong wind swept through the sky and thundered down from the sky, hitting the head of a hill giant who was unprepared, and immediately electrocuted its scalp in 7 orifices to emit hot white smoke. It is estimated that the brain was electrocuted to 70% or 80%. The remaining hill giants hurriedly raised their sticks to block their heads. Long N was also startled. He aimed at the hill giant in the middle, but he missed the one on the left. Fortunately, he hit its head, so his sneak attack was not in vain. After flying a long distance, Long N turned back again and changed direction to fly across the clearing and the forest again. After 3 times of spitting, he finally hit the knee of a hill giant, and the knee was instantly broken, and the leg was broken into 2. The last hill giant finally couldn't stand the pressure and turned to flee. Long N swooped down and knocked it to the ground. He pressed the hill giant's struggling arms with his 2 claws and sprayed a breath of thunder directly on the back of the mountain giant's head. Long N leisurely descended from the sky, endured the strong pain in his throat, and finished off the hill giant with a breath of dragon breath. Feeling the weakening of the power of dragon breath and the vague emptiness of the dragon breath crop in his chest, Long N guessed that if he sprayed out dragon breath 5 or 6 times in a period of time, he would be drained dry. If he ran into an enemy, after being drained dry, he would have to run away first. He had to be more restrained in the future. Ahem, human. Long N cleared his throat and said majestically, "You are safe now. Now is the time to fulfill your promise." Ryan and Tina still hid in the electrical barrier and did not come out. "Sorry, respected Lord Blue Dragon. This magic is not under our control. We can only come out when its power is exhausted. Why don't we sign a contract while we have plenty of time to ensure your rights and interests?" Long N rolled his eyes. This excuse was too poor. What about waiting until the energy is exhausted before coming out and signing a contract to protect their rights and interests? Aren't they just afraid that he would attack them? Taking the lambskin that flew over, Long N glanced at the clauses on it, such as people who sign the contract shall not harm each other, as well as the remuneration of 100,000 gold coins and 6 boxes of gems. Seeing that the other party did not bargain at all, he immediately understood that this unlucky child was probably a rich man. So Long N did not care about the unlucky child's little action, but still deliberately showed his ferocious fangs. Your offense makes me very angry. I decided to add another box of sapphires and 30,000 gold coins to the remuneration you should pay. Ryan had expected this, but he smiled and nodded with a slightly stiff expression. Of course, I hope the additional gems and gold coins can soothe your anger. Long N narrowed his eyes. Young people who are not well versed in the world are easy to be slaughtered. They don't even bargain. If I had known, I would have asked for 300,000 gold coins. You said you are willing to donate treasure and knowledge. Long N lowered his head against the electrical barrier. The jumping arc did not cause any damage to Long N's scales. There is no mention of knowledge in your contract. Looking at the ferocious dragon head close at hand, Ryan sweated coldly on his back. He knew that the seemingly small blue dragon in front of him was not easy to fool. It would not forget the more important things because of gold coins and gems. Sorry, this is our negligence. Ryan looked at Long N's eyes sincerely. I will make a copy of all the books I carry with me for you, just hoping to take the original away. Long N didn't expect this unfortunate child to be so self-conscious and decisive. He glanced at the densely packed things on Ryan's hand that should be the storage ring, nodded, and said that there was no problem. The new terms and the signature of Ryan Leon appeared out of thin air on the lambskin. Long N looked at it carefully for a long time and said, how do you sign this thing? Ryan. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 4 Need to Pay Extra. Under Ryan's guidance, Long N successfully used his mental power to leave his signature on the contract. The lambskin rolled up automatically, and a transparent scale appeared out of thin air, swinging up and down, slowly stopping as it tended to balance, and finally the scale and the lambskin disappeared into the air. Ryan and the barrier breathed a sigh of relief. They were finally safe. In the dark, Long N felt that there was something more in his soul, as if it was a gaze from an infinite height. This contract is witnessed by the God of Justice T, and those who violate the content of the contract will be punished by God. Ryan had guessed that Long N's dragon heritage was probably incomplete, and reminded him carefully. Looking at Ryan and the other person who walked out of the electrical barrier completely relaxed, Long N curled his lips, and what he said before was indeed an excuse. Coming back to his senses, Long N noticed the goblins lying on the ground with their heads in their hands and their buds sticking out. Looking around, Long N looked at the goblins lying on the ground in extreme fear and dared not move, thinking, these goblins were brought by the hill giants, which means they can communicate and be controlled. The dragons also seem to collect a bunch of followers to guard the caves, collect food or serve as food. All the dragons have to do is spend a little time to provide them with shelter. This is a kind of dependent relationship, which is beneficial to both parties. The dragons save time wasted on small things such as hunting and collecting treasures by themselves, and the dependent races have a strong backer, and no longer have to worry about being targeted by other powerful dangers and overturned overnight. Some lucky races can even evolve into powerful dragon vein creatures through long-term contact with dragon breath. It's time for me to collect some followers. The majesty of a real dragon starts with having followers to do things. A real dragon that has to hunt for food by itself is not cool. Long N cleared his throat, raised his head and said majestically, submit to me, or die. The goblins lying on the ground could not understand dragon language, but obedience to the strong was engraved in their blood. Just by listening to Long N's tone, they guessed what he meant. They ran to Long N's side and knelt down to worship him, praising Long N in a babble. Unfortunately, Long N could not understand. Well, what, Ryan, do you understand their language? Long N shamelessly asked this rich young man who knew a little dragon language. Ryan was speechless, but still behaved very respectfully. Lord Long N, the goblin language of these uncivilized wild goblins has a very confusing accent and grammar. I can only communicate with them to a limited extent. Long N nodded. It was fine if they could barely communicate, but he was afraid that the language was completely different and even the simplest communication could not be achieved. Although he was sad that he had fallen to the level of being a translator for wild goblins and blue dragons, Ryan still tried his best. He selected a few smart goblins through simple goblin communication and asked them about the origins of the three hill giants according to Long N's request. These goblins were a small local settlement nearby, and the three hill giants came from the north half a month ago, directly occupying their territory and driving them to hunt together. If the prey they hunted was not enough, they would eat them to fill their stomachs. Long N was relieved, as long as there was no large hill giant tribe nearby. The three young hill giants ran to such a place far away from the tribe and occupied the territory to live for a long time, which meant that there was probably a large and prosperous hill giant tribe with a saturated population in the north, with a population so large that they had to expel the excess young population to develop outside the tribal territory. A potential danger signal, especially for dragons, but these are not what Long N needs to consider now. Let the goblins lead the way, and after more than 2 hours of walking, they finally arrived at the goblin settlement. Looking at the tents and fences built with branches and leaves in front of him, Long N finally knew what kind of people these newly acquired followers were. Pure savages. Moreover, these goblins were so skinny that it was a big problem to know who would hunt whom in the wild. The only thing that satisfied Long was that there was a cave 4 or 5 meters above the ground on the mountain wall near the settlement. The cave was 5 or 6 meters high and had a large area, but it had been lived in by 3 hill giants before, and there was a peculiar smell of hill giants. Long N did not despise it and flew to the cave in trance and flapped his wings as an exhaust fan, but heard Ryan on the ground shouting at him, "Lord Long N, I can use magic to help you deal with this cave." After getting the nod, Ryan and his sister climbed to the cave entrance along the stone stairs carved out by the hill giants on the rock wall. After entering the cave, they kept casting the 2 low-level spells of Purify Gas and Remove Stains, making the interior of the cave quickly dry and fresh. After saying that the spells were really useful, Long N saw the Ryan brothers and sisters standing respectfully in front of him. From Ryan's respectful attitude and cooperation, Long N knew that this kid must have something to ask of him. "Tell me, what is your purpose?" Ryan lowered his head slightly and complimented, "Your wisdom shines brighter than your scales." "Humph." Long N snorted disdainfully, but in fact he was very pleased in his heart. "My brother and I are being hunted by the rebels of the Principality of Balan. I hope you can allow us to hide in your territory for a while, and we will leave when the situation in the Principality returns to peace. During this period, we will express our gratitude for your help and pay you 1,000 gold coins a month." And Ryan paused for a while, trying not to show any offense in his tone. "And I can also help you learn spells as a consultant, if you need it." On the way, Long N chatted with Ryan for a few words and got a general understanding of the situation in this world. He is now in the Storm Mountains, known as the Spine of Onia, at the westernmost part of the Onia continent. On the left side of the mountains is a vast storm sea, and on the right side are the Onia human countries. Relying on fighting spirit and magic, the human countries have formed a large number of extraordinary armies, almost occupying the most fertile land in various continents including Onia, and those powerful extraordinary people can pose a life threat to real dragons like Long N. Dragon scales have extremely strong spell resistance, which is more obvious in older real dragons, but there is still an upper limit. In this case, magic must be used to defeat magic. Generally speaking, real dragons with long lifespans and super elemental affinity will more or less have some interest in studying spells, and Long N is no exception. No matter how strong the power of a real dragon is, it is only a superficial use of power, just like humans breaking branches with their bare hands, and spells are like axes that allow humans to chop down giant trees. A spell learning consultant who pays for his salary? Long N needs this. So he grinned and said, "Okay, you have to pay more." Chapter 5 Goblins and Potatoes. In the end, the price set by the Ryan brothers and sisters for Long N was 1,000 gold coins per person per month, which was doubled. Long N, who secretly breathed a sigh of relief when seeing Ryan, knew that he was still too kind, and this unfortunate child was very rich. But when it came to paying the reward for saving them from the hands of the hill giants, Ryan only took out a small box of gems and 2 boxes of gold coins. Long N was not angry. If a contract witnessed by the gods was broken, it would definitely be punished by the gods. Even the 5-colored dragon Queen Tiamat, the mother of evil dragons, who gathered all the negative personalities of the 5-colored dragons and infinitely magnified them, and who only praised betrayal and evil deeds, would punish those who broke the agreement made in her name and torture them to the extreme. Lord Long N, my sister and I didn't have time to carry more gold coins when we fled. Except for the necessary reserves, all the gold coins and gems we carried are here. Ryan explained respectfully. He did not deceive Long N, but the reward would not be paid until they returned to Carter Castle. That's why he dared to ask to stay here. Before he paid the reward, the contract would always exist, and Long N couldn't hurt them. In order to get the balance that accounted for the bulk of the reward, Long N had to protect their safety. He didn't expect that he, a veteran who had graduated from a university and worked for 3 years, would be tricked by a 15 or 16-year-old kid, even though he was now a terrifying and evil 5-color real dragon. Interesting. Long N looked at Ryan seriously. Your nervousness when signing the contract was also a disguise, right? In order to make me relax my vigilance and not notice that there was no time limit in the contract. Ryan, that's not the case. It was my first time seeing a real dragon, and I was really nervous. Long N. After discussing the reward agreement, Long N took Ryan's storage ring containing the reward, and walked to the deepest part of the cave. Using the method Ryan said, he used his mental power to contact the ring, and released the gold coins and gems inside. He tilted his head and thought about it, then Long N raised his claws, and overturned the box containing gold coins. There were more than 20,000 gold coins in the 2 boxes, but they were only a shallow layer. Long N filled the big box with dirt and stones again, and finally covered the surface of the dirt and stones with a layer of gold coins. After dotting a small box of gems among the pile of gold coins, Long N nodded. It looks almost done now. Long N was very satisfied with his decoration skills. Next, he had to get down to business. Long N called the Ryan brothers and sisters who were still celebrating their survival and discussing their future, and asked them to act as interpreters, to command the goblins, to carry the bodies of the 3 hill giants. Long N did not eat the smelly and fat hill giants, but for the goblins, these were high quality prey of considerable size. Hill giants were essentially extraordinary creatures, and their bodies attracted the attention of many predators. Long N had to act as a security guard for the transport team. With the experience of fishing and law enforcement acquired in the major software comment areas in his previous life, the goblins carried 2 more tiger beasts and a large grizzly bear among the bodies. At night, Long N lay at the entrance of the cave and enjoyed the grizzly bear, whose surface was slightly charred by electricity after a breath, and stared at the goblin settlement below the cave with his excellent eyesight. They were clumsily splitting the muscles of the hill giant with rough stone slabs, and then grilling them on the fire, and then scrambling to eat the grilled and cooled barbecue. These were all Long N's orders. Goblins are very stupid, but there is one good thing. They will obey the arrangements of the Lord unconditionally, and the more powerful the Lord, the more thorough their obedience. The premise is to make them understand your orders. Long N gave the order, Ryan translated it, and selected the smarter goblins to relay it. It took an hour to make them understand that the prey must be grilled over a fire. Cooked meat is easier to absorb than raw meat. The rapid development of the ancient human brain began with eating cooked food. Maybe there are other factors in the other world, but Long N likes to try as much as possible. He suddenly felt a little disillusioned. He thought that, after traveling to another world, even if he couldn't have a harem of beautiful girls, as a giant dragon, he should be able to kill people everywhere and be invincible. Unexpectedly, he was starved to death, and after finally catching prey, he was worried about the hill giants, and was so angry at the dirty and stupid goblin followers, that he wanted to laugh, just because they couldn't speak the language. Forget it. I collected my own followers. Even if they are rotten mud, I will paste them on the wall first. What if they are stuck on the wall? There are 86 male young and middle-aged goblins, 14 elderly goblins, 67 young and middle-aged female goblins, and 31 goblin cubs in the whole settlement, a total of 198 mouths. Longen didn't care much about the goblins starving to death. He just liked to be serious about things, and since he collected followers, he wanted to make them stronger. Especially this kind of seriousness is mixed with the nature of blue dragons who like to control the weak, and like to be worshipped by other creatures. As soon as the sky brightened, Longen flapped his wings, and flew over the sky above the goblin settlement, leaving behind the goblins crawling on the ground and their sincere praises after eating. After a rough flight, and checking the surrounding terrain, Longen flew back to the cave. By the way, he called the Ryan brothers and sisters, and told them to build a few houses for the goblins first. The place where the Ryan brothers and sisters stayed last night was a stone house they quickly built, by using the simple spells of fossil to mud, control earth element, and mud to stone alternately. It's called a house, but it's actually a matchbox surrounded by a circle of stone walls and a roof that can shelter from wind and rain. It's very simple, just a place big enough for 200 goblins to sleep in, and it doesn't take much effort. Being ordered to use noble spells to build a house for the goblins, Ryan didn't feel any resentment. He knew a little about architecture and even carefully planned the load-bearing and moisture-proofing of the house. After repairing the house, Ryan, who was obviously mentally exhausted, walked into the cave. Lot Longen, stone houses large enough for 300 wild goblins to live in have been built. In addition to 6 stone houses for the wild goblins to live in, a conservation stone house for pregnant female wild goblins has also been built. Longen appreciates young people who are willing to work and like to use their brains. There is no boss who doesn't like employees who can complete their work beyond expectations. Seeing Ryan coming alone, Longen casually asked, "Where is Tina?" She said she wanted to walk around. Please forgive her willfulness. Longen shook his head, not caring at all, and said, "You can arrange your own time, as long as it does not affect the tasks I assign to you." Okay, let's get started. Yes, Lord Longen, we can start with the book Basic Spell Cognition and Spellcasting Principles. No, Longen shook his head. Let's start with the Owner Common Language. Follow your will. The progress of learning the Owner Common Language is very rapid. Thanks to the powerful memory of dragons and the strong language learning ability in his previous life, Longen could use short sentences and vocabulary in the Owner Common Language for simple communication in half an afternoon. Brother, we can eat grouse stewed with potatoes today. Longen saw the grouse and the potato-like thing in the hands of Tina, who walked into the cave, and his eyes lit up immediately. I suddenly want to plant something. Please read it again. Chapter 6, New Dragon Mage. Where did you find this? Longen motioned Tina to come closer and see the plant in her hand clearly. It's really a potato, but it's too small. Beans in the mud. Do you mean potato? Tina repeated the words Longen made up with a few words in the Owner Common Language, and took another look at the wild potato in her hand. They really look like beans in the mud, but they are too small. I saw some wild goblins digging holes in the grass, and I took a look out of curiosity, only to find that they were digging these wild small potatoes. Wild potatoes have not been replanted or bred, and there is no fertilizer or intensive cultivation, so how can they grow big? Seeing the deep interest in Longen's eyes, Ryan said, most of the territory of the Principality of Bolin is mountainous. Only the Botilan Plain, where the capital is located, can grow wheat in large quantities. Other areas grow potato as the staple food. I have eaten it several times, and the taste are not bad, and I heard that the yield is very high. Potatoes are famous for their hardiness and high yield. Even if they are planted in mountains, they can easily reach thousands of kilograms per mu. Agriculture in this world should not have developed to such a high level, and potatoes have just been domesticated, but the yield per mu is definitely much higher than that of wheat. Interestingly, as far as Longen knows, the undomesticated potatoes in the previous life seemed to be long strips or spindles, and they became plump and round after a long period of domestication and cultivation, while the potatoes in this world are directly round balls. Otherwise Longen might not recognize them at first sight. Do you know how to grow potatoes? Long N suddenly asked while staring at the wild potatoes. Ryan and Tina looked at each other. In addition to spell classes, they usually only studied grammar, language, and history. If they were interested, they would at most devote some energy to studying heraldry. They really didn't know about the cultivation of crops. Long N shook his head. These two people were obviously rich young men and rich women. How could they know these things? It would be useless to ask him. It seems that he had to practice it himself. Lord Long N, if you want the wild goblins to grow ball potatoes, I have a way to increase the yield of ball potatoes, even if you don't know how to grow them. Long N looked at Ryan and motioned him to continue. You can prepare the plant resurrection potion. The ingredients of this potion are simple and cheap. Its biggest function is to save some rare magical plants that are not cultivated properly. But if the potion is diluted, it should be used in the cultivation of yams. Long N's eyes lit up. He was still struggling with breeding and fertilizers, and he actually forgot that there were more convenient and quick things in this world. In this world, the use of extraordinary things in various fields has a long history. The Earth Mother Goddess Shangtiya, who is in charge of land, harvest and other powers, and the Forest Goddess Alona, who is in charge of plants and part of the natural power, will perform magic in certain festivals and celebrations to please the gods, or feel the will of the gods, so that large areas of crops will thrive. The kingdoms allow the believers of the Earth Mother Goddess and the Forest Goddess to build churches on their territories. In exchange, and as a means of spreading faith, they must use magic to fertilize the farmland during key farming seasons and natural disasters. There are also many lords who would rather buy the potions produced by the wizard, dilute them and irrigate them in the farmland, which can also promote growth, prevent pests and increase production. When Ryan was a child, he saw the manager of the farmland in the manor mixing magic potions when he went to the manor in the territory to escape the summer heat. What impressed Ryan so much was that the manager replaced the plant resurrection potion that was supposed to be used for mixing with some cheaper potion to make a profit, and then he was kicked out of the manor by Ryan's uncle. Long N thought for a few seconds and shook his head and said, "It's not yet to the point where magic potions are needed. Before the level of labor is improved, the leap in productivity is redundant. He only has about 200 goblins under his command. Even though the goblin settlement had a hard time surviving before, and the elderly goblins had a hard time surviving, accounting for a small proportion, but leaving aside the elderly and young goblins, there are only about 150 young and strong laborers left. There are too few people, and they are all skinny. The only thing to be thankful for is that the 3 selfless hill giants provided the goblins with 4 or 5 days of rations. A few days later, Long N will have a goblin settlement that is still small, but at least no longer weak. In short, we have to arm the goblins first, otherwise it may be a problem for them to catch a big mouse." The next day, Long N, who can communicate fluently in the common language of Onia, lay in the cave, where the sun can shine, looking at the book being turned by a pair of invisible hands in front of him, while listening to Tina's explanation of basic spell cognition and spell casting principles. In summary, the above experiments have verified that our world is immersed in an invisible magic dark sea. This dark sea encompasses the main material world and various secondary planes, including the elemental plane, the abyss plane, and even the star world in the kingdom of God. And the spell is the mental power that forms a specific line and surface structure to produce a specific vibration frequency that resonates with the dark sea, attracting the magic energy in the dark sea to combine with the mental power, and finally making the spell take shape. Stop. Tina, who was immersed in explaining the spell casting principles, was interrupted by Long N. Long N frowned slightly, recalling what he had just read in the book. Feel the existence of mental power, then guide the mental power to condense and construct the spell structure in this way. Well, this angle is correct. In Long N's soul, or 3-dimensional structure composed of lines was quickly outlined. Mobilize mental power to trigger and coordinate the casting action and spell. Before he had time to make a casting action and recite the spell, the powerful mental power directly allowed Long N to complete the spell without spells, and 2 transparent dragon claws with a diameter of 1 meter quickly condensed in midair. Is this also considered a success? Long N raised his front paws and pinched his chin, turning his head to ask Tina. Tina, The transparent dragon claws were sharp and the scales were clearly visible. They flew up and down very flexibly following Long N's thoughts, which proved that the caster's construction of this spell was almost perfect and his control of mental power was very exquisite. Tina had only seen this level of mage's hand from an 8th ring mage who taught her and Ryan, and Long N. He listened to his explanation while letting him help him turn the pages of a book with his mage's hand. In less than an hour, he figured out the principle of spell casting and built a mage's hand according to the steps in the book. It took him half a month to build a mage's hand. Well, maybe the learning ability and spellcasting talent of real dragons are just so outrageous. My mage's hand seems to be an enlarged version of my claw. Maybe it should be called Dragon's Hand or Long N's Claw. I don't know how powerful it is. The transparent dragon claw grabbed a stone in the cave and crushed it into gravel. Tina. Usually, the mage's hand can only open doors, turn books, and throw medicine bottles. When will it be able to crush stones? Question mark? Well, it's a dragon. Maybe dragons are like this. Then, flash. Dancing lights. Acid splashes. Frost ray. Tina. Damn it. Don't bully me like this. Damn it. Please save this. Please read it. Chapter 7 Goblin Attack. Long N waved his dragon claws and dispersed the light source summoned by the dancing lights. Glancing at Tina's somewhat dazed eyes, Long N's mouth curled up and then down. He just wanted to say that basic exercises are not useless. Today's class ends here. You can arrange the rest of the time yourself. Long N stood up, bathed in the sunlight at the entrance of the cave, shaking his body, and his dragon tail swept slightly with pleasure. It seems to have grown a circle larger than a few days ago. Are dragons growing so fast? Tina's mind only had one thought. There is a reason why dragons are classified as monsters. The wind was howling, but it surrendered to the winds. Long N narrowed his eyes and flew over the wilderness. I don't know if it was due to the nature of the blue dragon, but he liked the feeling of chasing and controlling the wind more and more. The residual energy of the magic crystal he had eaten before was gradually absorbed, and his body size grew again, and it had officially exceeded 5 meters. After learning some basic magic theory, Long N realized that his 4 magic crystals were earth, fire, wind, and water, respectively symbolizing the 4 basic elements of earth, fire, wind, and water. The crystal he ate was the wind element crystal. Returning to the cave, which seemed a little smaller, Long N put the remaining magic crystals into the space ring he got from Ryan for free, and then looked at the square stone platform with various strange patterns depicted around the central bit. Some kind of ancient ritual magic with 4 basic element and a blue dragon egg as materials. When intelligent creatures first learned to use spells, they roughly classified spells and casters by element, but they could not explain the problem that a wind elemental mage could summon a fire element from the elemental plane. It was not until countless years later that the systematic theoretical knowledge of spells was gradually improved. It is reasonable to put the ancient magic ritual together with the 4 element that symbolize the creation of the world at the beginning of the birth of spells. That means that I don't know how many thousands of years this dragon egg has been here. Even a true dragon has a lifespan of only more than 2000 years. Unless it breaks through to the ancient dragon, it is possible to live through endless time. Except for the abnormal legendary time dragon. Therefore, it is highly likely that Long N is really an orphan dragon. I started as an orphan. If I write a novel about my life as a dragon, I will probably post it on the Terminal website. Even with Long N's still shallow understanding of magic knowledge, he can see that this ancient magic circle has long been invalid. His dragon egg is estimated to have survived 4,000 of years in the elemental field, formed by the 4 magic crystals that gathered the elemental power and survived until it was hatched. Putting away his feelings, Long N walked out of the cave. After using the dragon hand to move stones to completely block the cave entrance, he spread his heavy wings and flew towards the goblin settlement with the wind. Ryan sat on the grass, recovering the mental power consumed by using magic to create batches of stone spearheads. Not far from him, dozens of goblins were clumsily cutting branches of suitable diameters and lengths into wooden sticks, breaking one end of the wooden sticks and inserting stone spearheads, and finally reinforcing the spearheads with twisted rattan ropes. The scene was a bit horrible. The goblins either cut the branches crooked, or broke the branches when breaking the spearhead slots, or tied them loosely, and the spearheads fell out. It was already difficult for them to figure out how to make javelins in a short period of time, and it was a bit difficult for them to ensure the quality. The sound of the dragon's wings flapping came from far away, and Ryan stood up immediately. Ron slowly landed on the ground and waved his hand to stop Ryan from bending over. No need to salute. The etiquette of your human nobles is too complicated. How's the progress? Ryan said. I'm sorry, Lord Ron. I taught the wild goblins how to make spears, but, forgive me for being blunt, they are too stupid, and not many of the spears they made are useful. Ron glanced at all the goblins crawling on the ground, and the weapons beside them, that could be described as shoddy, and said in the common language, all goblins continue to make spears. The goblin who knew a little bit of the common language, and was chosen as the leader immediately stood up, grabbed the spearheads and vine ropes beside him and started working, and shouted in goblin language to convey Ron's orders. Before we came, these goblins were just a group of animals that ate raw meat and drank blood. The weapons they used were branches and sticks that they could pick up at random. At least they can make javelins now. Take your time. Longen, the lord of the wild goblins, said so. Ryan naturally didn't care and nodded immediately. If the number of javelins made today is not enough, you can use magic to make a batch first, and then teach them how to use javelins. Let them hunt on their own tomorrow. The three-headed hill giant is almost eaten by them. Longen, as a lord, didn't enjoy any blessings at all, and had to worry about this group of lame followers. The depressed Longen could only comfort himself that this was the difficulty in the early stage of starting a business. When he became bigger and stronger, as a boss, he could do secretary work every day when he had something to do, and do secretary work when he had nothing to do, cough, drink tea, read newspapers and sleep when he had nothing to do. By the way, Longen thought of another thing. When you are done, let the idle goblins dig wild yams. Don't let them idle. Longen flew back to his dragon nest, lay on the gold coins, and took a deep breath. His mood suddenly became much happier, and he dotted 3 magic crystals in the most conspicuous position of the gold coin pile. The front paws overlapped in front, and the dragon head relaxed on the front paws. A book with a cover, wrapped in calf leather, the title pattern outlined with gold powder, and extremely exquisite workmanship appeared out of thin air. Longen summoned a pair of human palm-sized dragon claws to turn the pages. In the past 2 days, he has been learning the common language of Onia and magic. In his free time, he also has to read the books he asked from Ryan. Longen couldn't help but admire his diligence. Ryan had 7 or 8 storage rings on his hands, which were filled with various books, including magic books, human geography, travel notes and biographies. The nobles in this world attach great importance to the inheritance of knowledge, because this knowledge can really be transformed into power. The fact that a complete set of mage knowledge inheritance creates a legend or an empire is also real in this world. So when escaping, even if time is tight, the elders of the family packed up all the family books and handed them to Ryan, and then immediately secretly sent the brothers and sisters out of the city. The gold coins and property are still in the secret vault of the castle. It was agreed before that these books would be copied and given to Longen, but now there is no material and no time, so Ryan can only take out the originals of some books and give them to Longen to read. Longen, who caused Ryan to work from 9 to 9, was a little embarrassed about this, but there was no way. If the goblins want to develop, they must at least be self-sufficient first. Only when they are full can they have the ability to talk about development. Whether it is making weapons or planting potatoes, someone has to watch. In the end, there are not enough people, so they can only let the temporary Ryan brothers and sisters take over. Paying money for work, Longen was so moved that he wanted to give Ryan a touching capitalist award. Once we can fill our stomachs with hunting and become self-sufficient, it's time to start planting and breeding plants, tentatively focusing on potatoes and grouse, and then see if there are any large livestock suitable for breeding. The next step is to let Ryan teach the goblins to speak the common language. Solving the communication problem is also a top priority. Of course, these are Orion's work. The Great Lord Long is only responsible for planning and accepting the results. Chapter 8, A Big Rumor. It was another sunny day, perfect for the goblins' first collective hunting. According to the Ryan brothers and sisters, it should be the 4th day of the fire moon, and the weather will gradually get hotter, but this temperature change has no effect on the real dragon. Long N, who successfully released the first level mage armor, mana shield and weakness ray, after learning the first level spells for a whole day, was basking in the sun comfortably, ignoring Tina who was staring at him blankly. Tina studied spells for 6 years before being promoted to a 3rd level mage and was already considered a spell genius, while Long N only took 2 days from the beginning of learning to successfully releasing the 1st level spell. Don't compare with me, the real dragon's mental power is naturally strong. As long as you understand the principles of spells, it is very simple to construct a spell model. Unlike you humans, you still have to spend time to temper your mental power. The dazed Tina came back to her senses and nodded sullenly. Long N raised the corner of his mouth happily. Although he did not have the inheritance of the dragon, just having a real dragon's body was already a huge fortune. As the sun was setting, Long N raised his neck and looked at the edge of the forest. Dozens of excited goblins were carrying the bodies of several white-backed deer and a long-haired cow, and respectfully surrounded Ryan, who looked helpless, and walked out of the forest. Ryan wanted to get rid of the goblins hanging on his hands and legs, but he didn't do it in the end. Unlike the records he read in the books, these wild goblins were not as cunning and violent as the civilized goblins, and they liked to set fires and use various explosives. Perhaps it was because it was extremely difficult to survive that they seemed very innocent. Well, there was a kind of wild beauty. After hunting several prey with his guidance and help, these innocent wild goblins seemed to have regarded themselves as objects worthy of worship. This was a feeling that Ryan, who had lived a strict aristocratic life since childhood, had never experienced before, but it was not bad. It would be better if the wild goblins were cleaner and didn't stink. Long N squatted at the entrance of the cave with dignity, watching his family offering him a long-haired cow with its belly ripped open and its internal organs removed, still steaming with blood and hot steam, and grinned with satisfaction. Blue dragons naturally prefer such large herbivores, such as cows or camels, depending on what they can hunt in their territory. Back off. The dozen or so goblins who offered the long-haired cow immediately backed off, and the lightning brewing in Long N's mouth gushed out, electrocuting the long-haired cow to a scorched black and hot. The goblins saw a flash of blue and white lightning in front of their eyes, and when they heard the explosion of lightning, they all remembered the scene a few days ago when Long N, like a god, sent down thunder from the sky and killed the 3 hill giants. All the goblins knelt on the ground, fearful but devoutly worshipping this new master who allowed them to eat meat all they could for several days in a row. For the goblins who used to be hungry and feed on insects, grass roots and berries, mice are already a rare delicacy, not to mention the barbecued hill giants. This alone is enough for them to dedicate their loyalty and piety to their masters. While enjoying the praises of his family, Long N gnawed a mature whole beef steak, but Ryan came to the side and said to the bloody and even more ferocious real dragon head in front of him, "Lord Long N, I found an abandoned campfire in the hunting area. Judging from the traces, it should have been a few days." Long N chewed slowly. "Tell me what you think." Ryan lowered his head and said, "It may be the mercenaries who came here to chase our bounty." Long N first met Ryan's brother and sister when they were chased into the Storm Mountains by mercenaries, and then they were unlucky to run into hungry hill giants. It is very likely that some powerful mercenaries found this area by following the traces. Long N has been flying in the sky from time to time these days, and it is estimated that he has been seen by those mercenaries. Don't worry, since I have promised to protect you, I will not go back on my word. Inexplicable pride prompted Long N to say. Then he added silently in his heart, "But if the master comes and wants to take my dragon scales and dragon tendons, I can only moisten them first. This is force majeure. At most, I will find an opportunity to take you with me. After all, there is still a large debt to be settled, and Long N does not want his debtor to get into trouble." Blackstone Town, located outside the Storm Mountains, on the border of the Principality of Balan. As the barony closest to the Storm Mountains and the Principality of Balan, a large number of mercenaries and adventurers gather here to hunt extraordinary creatures, or collect extraordinary materials, which greatly promotes the prosperity of local wine and meat industries. In the Windhowl Tavern, the adventurers and mercenaries who were either sitting in the corner in silence, or gathered together to make loud jokes and clink glasses were attracted by the sound of bang. A dusty ranger knocked open the old wooden door of the tavern. He was awakened by the quiet atmosphere and finally breathed a sigh of relief. "Old York, give me a glass of damn absinthe." Walking past the crowd that was becoming lively again, the ranger quickly walked to the bar and threw out 6 copper coins. "Give me the extra strong one. Don't try to fool me with the watered down one." The smiling bald bartender pushed over a glass of green and thick absinthe. "Didn't you say you don't like the psychedelic effects of absinthe? Aren't you worried that it will make your bow fingers tremble? If you ask me, your hands will tremble along with your legs if you go to Pink Alley too often." The mercenaries leaning against the bar burst into laughter, but the ranger, contrary to his usual behavior, did not directly curse bullshit, but raised the glass and poured it into his mouth, letting the laughter get stuck in the mercenaries' throats. The bald bartender raised his eyebrows, took the glass and refilled it for the ranger. "It's your turn, buddy. Are you interested in telling me what happened?" The ranger tightened his cloak. The alcohol and psychedelic ingredients made him relax a lot. He opened his mouth and finally uttered a word: "Dragon." The tavern suddenly became quiet, and then a louder and more noisy noise broke out than before. "What the hell?" he said. "Dragon? How could there be a dragon on the east side of Storm Mountain? I've never heard of it. I've been to the depths of Storm Mountain several times. Why haven't I seen a dragon? Real dragons collect treasures, don't they? Will there be mountains of gold coins in the dragon's nest?" Bang. "It's true. A blue dragon." The ranger angrily smashed a wine glass on the bar and shouted, "I was in stealth mode looking for clues about the 2 special bounty targets, and then a 10-meter long blue dragon flew over my head, pressing down the treetops." Well, the poor ranger was frightened by the 5-meter tall Long N, and was shocked by Long N's unrestrained dragon power. He mistakenly thought that Long N was 10 meters tall, and it was a reasonable behavior for a man to add a little bit of exaggeration to cover up his cowardice and save face. As a result, the 2 special bounty targets worth 5,000 gold coins were forgotten by the people of Blackrock Town, and everyone began to discuss a large blue dragon of 15 or 16 meters long, and a real dragon treasure that could allow people to redeem a viscount's territory and live the life of a noble lord. 2 girls in black robes and with their hats pulled down sat in a moldy corner of the Windhowl Tavern, quietly drinking delicious sour berry juice. A large blue dragon. Killy, will the person you are looking for be captured by it? Our goal is just to find someone. Pan, you'd better not think about irrelevant things, let alone take action. Don't worry. It's agreed that I will listen to you when I go out. The more you say that, the more I feel that something will happen. Chapter 9. New familiar. Leaving the matters of teaching goblins to hunt and plant yams to Ryan and Tina, Long N took the time to make up for his lack of knowledge of the world due to his lack of dragon heritage. The history of Balan, the customs and emotions of Onia, the deadly monsters of Storm Mountain, the Silver Knight's restoration, commodities and gold coins. In just a few days, Long N read dozens of travel notes, history books, illustrated books, miscellaneous studies, and even romantic novels without sleep with his strong reading ability. The common sense recorded or revealed in these things more or less made up for the missing heritage, but some secret knowledge naturally could not be supplemented by these books. Lord Long N. Ryan, who was in a mess, walked into Long N's cave. Long N glanced at the blackened and corroded marks on Ryan's clothes, frowned and said, "Did you encounter human mercenaries?" Ryan shook his head. "The goblins broke into a forest full of traps while hunting, and I accidentally triggered the traps when I was investigating. Large areas of traps." Long N became interested. "Are there any signs of human activities?" "No." Long N closed the book with a snap and smiled. "If it is what I think, it is really the best news in recent times." The sky was dim, and Long N grabbed Ryan and flew to the forest full of traps. Casting detection magic, faint but dense spell auras appeared in Long N's field of vision, which further confirmed Long N's guess. These traps are probably the masterpieces of dog-headed people. Although dog-headed people have the word dog in their names, they are actually more like small monsters with scales on their heads and strange dragon heads. It is said that they have the same blood as real dragons, and their natural dragon language and physical characteristics similar to real dragons can prove this. But the real dragons would not admit that these noisy little creatures were their blood relatives. If anyone was so ignorant as to mention their blood relationship in front of the real dragons, he would most likely face the wrath and revenge of the real dragons. In any case, the kobolds were still the real dragons, especially the young real dragons' first choice when they wanted to recruit their followers. The short kobolds had a blood-based enthusiasm for the huge real dragons, which allowed the real dragons to easily gain the loyalty of a large group of kobolds. They could guard the dragon's nest, rob treasures, and even offer the golden gems they dug for the real dragons. They were also very good miners. With a group of kobold followers, Long N's lack of useful talents could be greatly alleviated. Walking into the forest full of traps, and letting the traps be triggered, gunpowder, acid, and darts could not leave any marks on Long N's scales. After walking a long circle, Long N finally found a cave hidden under a large stone slab. Dang dang. He stretched out his dragon claws, and tapped the stone slab gently. No response. Ahem. Long N lifted the stone slab and cleared his throat. Roar. A roar full of dragon power poured into the cave. This was Long N communicating in dragon language. He said, "Come out for me." The dragon roar lasted for 7 or 8 seconds. The surroundings were quiet for a moment, and then the strange dragon language mixed with woof woof sounded out of the cave. True dragon woof. It's a real dragon woof. It's a real dragon woof. A large group of dog-headed people less than 1 meter tall and with different scales rushed out of the cave and then spontaneously sang and danced around Long N. They sang dragon songs and danced dragon dances, but the dog-headed people's singing was really unbearable to the ears, and the dragon dances performed by their short bodies were unbearable to watch. Long N, who seemed to be thrown into a pile of huskies, felt that his brain was about to explode because of the noise. The blood vessels in his head were throbbing. If they continued to sing, he might have a cerebral hemorrhage. Shut up. The happier kobolds were frightened by the shouting and fell to the ground, but they still stuck out their tongues and looked up, looking at Long N with a flattering smile. Long N began to regret it. This kobold was too weird, and it seemed that he was no better than the goblins. Woof. Lord True Dragon. Woof woof. Your servant woof. Golden Foot is late woof. I beg for your forgiveness. At all. Compared to other kobolds, Golden Scaled Kobold fell to the ground in front of Long N surrounded by a group of kobolds. Hey, Long N didn't expect it to be so smooth. He was shocked and bowed down. He came to his senses and immediately raised his head proudly and majestically. From today on, you are my clan, Long N. Now, stand up and report your situation to me. Enduring the annoying woof, Long N got the information he wanted from the kobold leader named Golden Foot. There are more than 1,000 kobolds living in the ground at a depth of more than 20 to 50 meters. They have established complete agricultural and breeding facilities and are completely self-sufficient. Among the many kobolds, there are more than 100 kobold warriors. Although they are short, they are muscular and powerful, and they are smart and cunning enough. Their strength is roughly equivalent to that of a human knight of level 1 or 2. At the same time, this tribe has also produced 14 kobold warlocks. The strongest one can use 3 ring spells. For a kobold tribe with only more than 1,000 people, this can be regarded as a miracle. Generally speaking, there may be one spellcaster among thousands of people. Among this group of kobolds, this ratio has directly doubled by more than 10 times. Long N was very satisfied with this group of kobold families. He ordered them to stop mining temporarily on the spot and dig a tunnel directly to the goblin settlement. Long N thought about moving the goblins here directly, but there was no suitable cave here to be a dragon's nest, so he decided to live there for the time being. After receiving the fanatical praise and loyalty from several kobold leaders, Long N returned to the dragon's nest. He was reading until midnight when a kobold followed Long N's scent and climbed into the cave, respectfully reporting that the tunnel had been dug through. Long N, who was unable to read because of the woofing noise, brightened his eyes after hearing "send all the gems over" and decided not to pursue the matter that the kobolds had upset him. Bags of gems were carried into Long N's nest by kobold warriors wearing crude iron armor. They were carrying gems and rare metals that the tribe had worked hard to dig for hundreds of years, but their faces were full of excited smiles, as if it was their honor to offer the tribe savings to the real dragon. After instructing the kobold warriors to call their leader, Long N couldn't wait to pour several bags of gems on the gold coins. Clatter. The sound of gems colliding with gold coins made Long N tremble all over, and he felt so comfortable that his soul seemed to ascend to heaven. Although the gems dug by the kobolds were small and of poor quality, they were in large quantities. Long N grabbed a handful of shining gems and stuffed them all into his mouth, regardless of quality or type. The life of a rich dragon is so plain and boring. This is also one of the reasons why real dragons are willing to accept kobolds as their followers. They can get a lot of gems or gold for free. Soon, Long N, lying on gold coins and various gems, saw a kobold leader with blue scales. Huh? Why not golden foot? The kobold leader explained, and Long N realized that this group of kobolds believed that only the kobolds with scales closest to Long N could be the leader after following Long N. So Golden Foot retreated to the second line, and Blue Ear, a blue-scaled kobold with good strength, was elected as the new leader. It didn't make much difference to Long N whether the kobolds changed their leaders or not, but he did like the blue one more. This group of little brothers who were like licking dogs really made the dragon happy. It would be better if they didn't have mouths. Come here, I have something I need you to do. Chapter 10. Sleeping. The newly acquired followers burst out with shocking enthusiasm, and they carried out Long's orders meticulously. As soon as the sky was bright, the kobolds who had been working in the middle of the night retreated to the cave. Their eyes were not used to strong light, and even the light of torches in the dark could hurt their eyes. So Long asked them to work at night, and in just half a night, the kobolds leveled out a piece of land that could be used for planting. They had mushroom and fluorescent berry farms underground. Although they had never planted potato, they were good at cultivating and turning farmland. In addition to the farmland, they also built a circle of earth walls. This was an unfinished livestock shed, and it seemed that it would take a few days. The addition of the new followers made the innocent goblins very happy. In their minds, more people means safety. The few goblin leaders who were selected to speak the common language were a little worried, fearing that the new followers would perform too well, and the master would not want them directly. Therefore, they worked harder, and wished to hunt all the whiteback deer in the forest when hunting. Everything was going in a good direction. Long N decided to leave the specific matters to his subordinates, and take a nap. Long N lay on the pile of gold coins and gems, and said to a dark corner, "Go call Blue Ear and Ryan." Ryan is the male human in the territory. In the corner, the dog-headed man who had been covering his mouth under Long N's order to prevent himself from praising Long N immediately went into the cave behind him. Blue Ear and Ryan arrived one after another and stood in front of Long N respectfully. Blue Ear, let your people continue to build the barn and listen to Ryan's arrangements while I'm asleep. Although he didn't like this human in his heart, since it was the master's order, Blue Ear would definitely obey. As you command. Woof. Long N looked at Ryan. Keep an eye on them. Don't make any trouble. I believe that with your ability, this is not a problem. Ryan nodded. Yes, sir. In addition, Long N instructed, when the kobolds are done with their work, let them arrange some kobold warriors to act as scouts and pay attention to night patrols. You can discuss the specifics with Blue Ears. If any mercenaries chase here, wake me up directly. Follow your will. After letting Ryan and Blue Ears leave, Long N took out the 3 remaining magic crystals, hesitated for a long time, and threw the earth element crystal into his mouth. The delicious magic crystal turned into energy and flowed into his throat. Long N curled up in a C shape and lay down, with his wings down, covering his body and treasures. After a while, there was only Long N's long and powerful breathing in the nest. The hill giants in the north and the human mercenaries in the east made Long N feel a lot of pressure. Although the real dragon is powerful, it can't stand that he is just a young dragon of more than 5 meters. The more he read the books he got from Ryan, the more uneasy Long N became. Whether it was the giant shamans that might exist in the hill giant tribe or the human legends in the human kingdom, they all posed a fatal threat to him. According to the records in the book, in the past 500 years, there have been 9 confirmed records of humans slaying dragons. It was too scary for dragons. Long N was eager to become stronger, and eating and sleeping were the best ways for dragons to grow. The temperature gradually rose, and large pieces of ball potato leaves grew in the goblins' farmland. The grouse that had been plucked of their flight feathers finally began to lay eggs. Several small long-haired cattle no longer had the panic they had when they were first caught, and they leisurely ate the weeds they were fed. Under Long N's nest, deeper in the land, tunnels were opened one by one, rooms were built one by one, and the dog-headed people rebuilt a large residential area here. Long N, who was sleeping, continued to digest and absorb the energy transformed into elemental crystals, but some energy always dissipated into the surrounding air with Long N's breathing. The energy in the air was increasing, and gradually began to enrich the element in the small cave, and even the creatures living near the cave were affected. This is the 27th transformed dragon singing kobold. Ryan waved his hand to let the goblin who had fluently reported the situation in the common language leave, and then looked in the direction of the dragon's nest. There are also 4 mutated fire goblins, 6 frost goblins, a lightning goblin that has never been heard of, and the kobolds have awakened more than 40 dragon vein kobolds. This is the creature standing at the top of this world, the power of the real dragon. Just sleeping can make the surrounding creatures undergo such a big change. In fact, even Ryan and Tina felt that the speed of cultivation near the dragon's nest was advancing by leaps and bounds. I really don't know how much the real dragon that caused all this will change. Outside the Storm Mountains, a group of mercenaries cleared a piece of open space and began to camp. A swordsman girl and a priest girl whispered something. I told you to just go into the mountains. It's all your fault. You had to find some mercenaries who also wanted to go into the mountains to go with you. That's why we've been delayed for so many days. Be quiet, Pan. The priest girl held her forehead helplessly. That's a large blue dragon of 15 meters. What if we really run into it? These adventurers have rich experience in detection and avoidance. We will be much safer if we stay with them. Safe? Who knows how many of them may have drunk too much absinthe and are going for the dragon's treasure without a clear mind. Isn't that more dangerous? At least these adventurers are better at finding people than us. The depressed swordsman Pan looked at his gentle and smiling companion and could only turn around and leave angrily, but he almost collided with a two-handed swordsman. Sorry, Miss Pan, are you okay? The tall two-handed swordsman deliberately puffed out his chest, highlighting his strong chest muscles, and gave Pan a self-proclaimed charming smile. Do you think I'm blind? Did you bump into me on purpose to chat me up? Did your head get caught by a dwarf's ass? You've been single for 30 years and haven't been in a relationship. Now that you've read a few chivalrous novels, you think you're good enough. Pan, who was already in a bad mood, vented his anger on the two-handed swordsman who bumped into the muzzle of the gun, leaving the tall two-handed swordsman stunned on the spot. A burst of laughter erupted from behind the newly set up tent, making the two-handed swordsman blush red in the face. He could only lower his head and walk away quickly in embarrassment. Haha, Miss Pan is really imposing. I like this kind of goblin-like explosive personality. With you? Take a piss and see what you look like. Pink Lane will charge you half the price to receive you. Even louder laughter erupted from behind the tent. But then again, Miss Pan is beautiful and powerful. Even if I were 30 years younger, I would still be fascinated by the smell of sage and spices on her body. Come on, boys. I still prefer Ever and Miss Cooley. She is beautiful and gentle. Go to hell. I want to duel with you. Miss Cooley is mine. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 11 Dragon. The fire moon has ended, and the moon over the Onia continent gradually turned golden, symbolizing the arrival of the golden moon. With the mutant fire and frost goblins leading the way, the hunting team brought back more prey, and the ball potatoes planted became more and more luxuriant. Ryan, who finally had some free time, spent his time every day tempering his spiritual strength and learning spells, and only listened to the reports of the kobold warriors who had finished their night reconnaissance in the morning, when the sun was not strong. A dozen humans have set up camp in the goblin hunting area. Ryan barely understood what the kobold warrior meant from the strange dragon language mixed with woof woof sounds, and asked it to go back to the cave to rest first. No mercenaries have tracked us for a month, and I thought the group of people in the capital had revoked our wanted order. Ryan's face was filled with hatred. Although he wanted to capture those mercenaries first to inquire about the current situation of the Principality of Balan, Ryan looked in the direction of the dragon's nest with concerns. The only forces he could rely on were the blue dragon's followers. If some of them died in the battle with the mercenaries, it might make him unhappy. Although real dragons usually don't care much about the lives of their followers, this one seems to be different. Moreover, even if it doesn't care about the lives of its followers, its behavior of exceeding its authority might make the real dragon feel that its authority is offended. For the proud real dragon, this is the biggest problem. If those mercenaries continue to approach and reach the point where they have to fight back, then ordering the mercenaries to be captured and tortured will not be considered exceeding authority. Why don't they agree to change direction? In the small tent of the temporary camp, Killy frowned slightly and asked the female swordsman Pan, "We have been going around for more than half a month, and we haven't found any human figures. Instead, we are getting closer and closer to the dragon's nest. These greedy and stupid guys are really going for the dragon's treasure." The angry Pan and the frowning Killy remembered the dragon vein kobolds near the camp that they sensed last night, and they could be sure that they had now entered the territory of the large blue dragon. Although blue dragons are classified as lawful evil creatures and can coexist peacefully with other creatures, they hate those who intrude into their territory. They have been discovered by the blue dragon's followers. Perhaps in a few seconds, a blue dragon more than 10 meters long will fly over their heads and breathe out terrifying thunder. The strongest of these mercenaries is only the level of a 6th level knight. What gave them the courage to find the dragon's nest? Killy shook her head and said, "Maybe they just want to explore the information of the dragon's nest. This information can also be sold at a high price." Even so, Killy and Pan still felt that they were stupid. How could the nest of a nearly adult blue dragon be so easy to explore? I'm afraid they would be captured by the followers and become slaves in the dragon's nest as soon as they approached. Although it was not their intention, we are still partly responsible for them getting to this dangerous situation. Killy sighed. There are a few truly kind people among them. We can't just watch them die. Swordsman Pan also said helplessly, "Let's help them as much as possible." 3 days later, the mercenaries approached the goblin settlement as Ryan wished. Crack. An inconspicuous branch was broken by the mercenary walking in front, and several darts were ejected instantly. While being stabbed, he shouted loudly, "There is an ambush." When the mercenaries found out that something was wrong, it was too late. Around them, under the dark shade of the trees, the fallen leaves and bushes were already full of traps set by the dog-headed people. In the shadows, a flash of magic flashed, and the heavy water vapor formed a large cloud of fog that completely enveloped the forest. The light was blocked by the fog, and the forest became even darker. One by one, the dog-headed people swiftly drilled out of the cave covered by the fallen leaves, and then quickly hid themselves in the shadows. The dog-headed warriors were good at hiding in the dark and launching sneak attacks when the enemy was not paying attention. Dozens of extremely sturdy dog-headed people with a height of 1.5 meters surrounded the mercenaries. Their powerful limbs and slightly protruding dragon horns on their heads were looming in the mist. "Dragon vein dog-headed people," the knowledgeable mercenary whispered. "Dragon vein kobolds are mutated kobolds that have been infected with the powerful dragon aura. They still look short, but have the power comparable to that of trolls. They are also incredibly agile and are extremely difficult to deal with." The only second-ring mage who was protected by the mercenaries in the center raised his staff and wanted to release the wind spell to blow away the fog. A hymn sung in dragon language mixed with woof woof sounds just in time. The magic power and dragon power contained in the sound shook the souls of the mercenaries, making them dizzy and irritable and difficult to concentrate. The mage who just raised his staff could only pause the spell. In this case, if he forced the spell to be chanted, he might be backfired because of the failure of the spell. "It's the dragon singer. Be careful of their calls." Killy, who was also protected in the middle, did not sing or cast spells. The magic aura on her body kept flashing. Tree skin spell, brute force spell, calm the mind and resist the element spell were released one after another, which made the mercenaries secretly frightened. It turns out that Miss Killy, dressed as a priest, is also a spellcaster, and she is so powerful that she can cast spells without a spell. The influence of the dragon singing dog-headed man's singing has slightly weakened, and the captain, temporarily elected by the mercenaries, decided to break out immediately. But when they turned around, a row of meteor-like flames and ice spikes immediately shot out from behind them, forcing them to stay where they were and defend. Being surrounded and pressed by the concentrated fire, the strongest 6th level swordsman among the mercenaries shouted angrily, raised his great sword, and slashed at the dog-headed man in front of him. Clang! A hand claw covered with golden scales deflected the sword. After awakening and transforming into a dragon vein creature, the golden scale dog-headed man Jinjiro, who was over 1.6 meters tall, also increased his strength to level 4. Although it is not the opponent of the 6th level swordsman in a one-on-one fight, it is not much inferior to the opponent in terms of strength alone. The 6th level swordsman put away his sword and fought back, but a warning suddenly arose in his heart, and he decisively chose to roll in embarrassment. Just as he dodged, a silver-white lightning struck the spot where he had just stood. Seeing that the sneak attack failed, a silver-white goblin waved his scimitar in anger. What kind of monster is this again? The sound of bowstrings trembling came from all around in the thick fog, and dense short bows shot at the thighs of the mercenaries. The fog was dim, and several mercenaries were caught off guard and unfortunately injured. Killy and Pan in the crowd looked at each other, and a flash of light flashed on their bodies. A strong wind blew in the forest, and the fog condensed by water vapor quickly dissipated. The suddenly enhanced light forced the dog-headed people to close their eyes, and the short bows in their hands had to stop shooting. The pressure on the mercenaries was reduced, and they didn't bother to question why Killy didn't use the wind spell earlier. They threw gunpowder bombs or spell scrolls to cover the rear. The mercenaries who suffered heavy losses were bleeding, especially those who used spell scrolls. If I had known earlier, I shouldn't have joined this damn temporary team. Looking at the goblins and goblins blocked by explosives and spells, Ryan was a little anxious. After waiting for more than a month, a few human mercenaries finally came to ask for information. He didn't want them to escape, but the mercenaries completely ignored the traps in the forest. Darts, ground spikes, acid, and flames kept leaving marks on their bodies, but the mercenaries were determined to rush forward, just to save their lives. Seeing that the mercenaries were about to escape the trap set by the goblins, a strong dragon's might swept over everyone. The wind was howling, accompanied by thunder. An 8-meter-long blue dragon came from the horizon, and it arrived in an instant, hitting the mercenaries' retreat heavily. The smoke and dust were filled, as if the smell of grassy ozone reached the mercenaries' noses, and tiny arcs of electricity jumped between long-end scales. The mercenaries only saw a ferocious dragon head slowly raised in the smoke and dust, and they couldn't help but feel choked in their hearts under the shock of the dragon's might. Looking down at the panicked mercenaries, Longen grinned, revealing his sharp fangs, and said, "I didn't say you can leave." Chapter 12 Dragon and Dragon and Dragon. Under the suffocating pressure, the weak mercenaries' legs kept shaking, and the weapons in their hands almost fell to the ground in fear. Only the 6th level swordsman withstood the pressure, and mustered up the courage to run towards Longen with a sword. He knew that he had almost no chance of winning, but he was not going to surrender. Longen did not move as the sharp sword swung at him, but the swordsman felt a terrifying danger, but he could not dodge it this time. In the smoke and dust, a blue dragon tail rushed out like lightning, smashing the swordsman's fighting spirit shield with one blow, and blew the swordsman away. After breaking a tree, he slid on the ground for several meters before stopping. The swordsman's face was covered with blood, his chest was heavy, and he was breathing hard. Longen took a glance, and retracted his gaze. Except for the two human girls who he could not see through, the strongest one among this group of humans had been dealt with by himself. Killy, he is only 8 meters. Not 15 meters at all. Swordsman Pan and Killy used telepathy directly. Yes, he is 8 meters, but blue dragons live with the clan. Can you guarantee that there won't be another 15-meter blue dragon flying out? Pan was immediately deflated. Killy looked at the unusual blue dragon in front of her. Compared with the ordinary blue dragon, the neck, limbs and tail are more slender. The lower jaw does not have protruding teeth, and the black horns on the top of the head and the 4 black dragon horns on both sides of the head are like a crown. It is really a strange blue dragon, but quite handsome. Unlike other blue dragons with thick and strong limbs, Longen looks more elegant and fit, and the dragon horns that grew after waking up from sleep this time gave him a pleasant surprise. It is normal for a real dragon to have some mutations during its growth, but most of them will only change the shape and thickness of the scales, grow barbs, and change the shape of the dragon horns. Generally speaking, it is still in line with the morphological structure of this species. And Longen, to be honest, except for the color of his scales, he doesn't even have much in common with the blue dragon. But this situation is not uncommon in the history of true dragons, and those dragons with extremely different bodies are called heteromorphic dragons. Longen's eyes slowly swept over each mercenary, and the mercenaries lowered their heads in fear, only slightly surprised when they met Killer's calm eyes and Pan's angry eyes. These 2 airports are very brave. Longen muttered in his heart, but on the surface he said calmly and majestically, "Invaders, you now have only 2 choices, surrender to me, or die. Is there any other option besides death?" The mercenaries hesitated and looked at each other. A young female ranger raised her hand weakly. After Longen's signal, she asked carefully, "Lord True Dragon, do you need us to do anything? I heard that the True Dragon will snatch young and beautiful girls, and then. The girl turned pale and blushed halfway through and couldn't continue. Longen's face was full of black lines. The weird hobbies of real dragons in this regard have long been deeply rooted in people's minds, especially the 5-color real dragons. Therefore, there are many romantic adventure novels with this as the theme in the human world. The real dragon is undoubtedly the villain in the novel. I'm not interested in humans. I just need you to do things for me. The mercenaries were still hesitating, but Killian Pan's attention was focused on other things. This blue dragon said to submit to him and be loyal to him. If a young dragon lives with an adult or more powerful dragon, then he has no right to recruit a family for himself, because everything on this land will only be the property of the more powerful dragon. In other words, the blue dragon in front of him is actually the lord of this land, the legendary 15-meter blue dragon. After thinking it through, Pan's eyes lit up and gritted his teeth and said, "Evil guy who is used to cheating, the righteous Vidal Pan will punish you." In the astonished eyes of everyone and Longen, the female swordsman Pan's body flashed with spiritual light. Her body stretched and expanded. The yellow metal scales were closely arranged, and a row of radiating dragon wings extending to the tip of the tail appeared on both sides of her body. Longen looked at the whiskers swinging on the opponent's upper and lower jaws, as well as the golden stripes on the yellow scales, and confirmed that it was a nearly 7-meter long golden dragon. A golden dragon that likes to do good things and fight evil to satisfy its moral needs. Longen was a little dignified. Although his body length was more than 1 meter longer than the opponent, the golden dragon was one of the top true dragons, and the opponent might be very difficult to deal with. The golden dragon Vidalpan ran towards Longen, and her leaping running posture made the radiated dragon wings on the side of her body rise and fall like waves. If her posture was as elegant as waves, then her attack should be a tsunami. A burst of cone-shaped flames rushed straight to Longen's face, followed by the golden dragon's powerful body that hit directly. She wanted to rely on the golden dragon's strength advantage to defeat this blue dragon that didn't look that strong. Facing a golden dragon, the first true dragon enemy she had encountered, Longen, who was not sure in his heart, decided to go all out. The violent thunder met the flames, and Longen slapped it hard with all his strength. The thunder collided with the flames, but unexpectedly penetrated the burning flame wall directly and shocked Vidalpan behind the flames, causing him to tremble all over. Facing the claw that came with a whistling sound, Vidalpan, who was somewhat confused by the electric shock, had no time to react and ran straight into it. It looked like Longen was waving his hand, and then Vidalpan put his face forward and got slapped. The dragon head was tilted by Longen's claw, and the body that rushed forward by inertia also tilted to one side, and it broke 4 or 5 trees before stopping. The tall dragon body tilted in the flying leaves, and did not get up again. The mercenaries were overjoyed, and thought they were saved. Longen, who thought he had encountered a strong enemy. What is going on? Killed in one slap? Longen's mouth twitched. Metal dragons and other good dragons are famous for making friends and beating the younger ones to the older ones. If this guy can't even withstand a slap from me and dies, I will be in big trouble. Before I could think about it, Killy, who couldn't bear to watch it, rubbed her forehead with a headache, and her body shape began to change. A 7-meter silver dragon covered with shining silver scales, with a gorgeous ruffle supported by silver spikes that gradually turned black at the end, and two smooth small horns on its head, appeared out of thin air. Mercenaries. Long N. Is this the end? Why is there another one? Helplessly, Long N turned his head and looked at the mercenaries. Are there any more dragons? Why don't you all transform? The remaining mercenaries looked at each other, as if asking their companions, why don't you transform yourself too? Silver Dragon. No more, only Videlpin and I are with them. Long N looked up and down at the elegant and beautiful girl dragon, and said, do you want to avenge your companions? The silver dragon shook his head. She just fainted temporarily. Powerful blue dragon, I just want to ask you to let these ignorant humans go. They are already your spoils. So I can pay a certain amount of compensation for this. Long N thought about it. Just a few humans. It doesn't matter if they are gone. So he nodded and agreed. Of course it's no problem, but you have to try to ensure that they don't spread everything here. After all, I'm just a weak young dragon. If the news gets out, it will be easy for someone to plot against me. Weak? The silver dragon glanced at his companion who showed no signs of waking up. If you think you are weak, then you are weak. Thank you for your kindness. Silver Dragon said sincerely. After hesitating for a moment, he asked, also, I wonder if you have ever seen a pair of blonde human siblings in the territory? Chapter 13 Goblin Village Tour. Sister Curelia. Before Long N could answer, he heard Ryan shouting in surprise. Ryan. Silver Dragon Curelia had thought of finding clues about Ryan from Long N, but she didn't expect to meet him on the spot. I'm so glad you're okay. Where's Tina? After receiving the reply that Tina was also safely with Ryan, Silver Dragon smiled and turned to Long N. Thank you for taking care of Ryan and Tina during this period. Long N curled his lips. They were all acquaintances. It seemed that they came here just for Ryan's brother and sister. He would probably lose 2 free laborers. It's easier if you know them all. Long N put on a smiling face. Since it's all a misunderstanding, why don't you come to my place and sit down? It's not that easy to take away Long N's free labor. He has to give some compensation. Seeing that the golden dragon Videlpin next to him finally woke up, Curelia agreed on behalf of her companion. It's our honor. Videlpin, who had some double vision and slight tinnitus in front of his eyes, shook his head and subconsciously cast several healing spells on himself. He raised his head and saw a blue figure in his blurred vision. Videlpin's heart jumped, and he immediately used all his life's knowledge to cast various protective spells. His body and head were shrouded in the light of various shields, especially his head, which was tightly wrapped in the magic aura. Videlpin shouted with a voice that was a little distorted through various shields. Despicable blue dragon. You actually attacked my head. This dragon will never coexist with you. Long N looked back speechlessly, then looked at Curelia. Is your friend mentally ill? The silver dragon Curelia couldn't bear to look directly at it, and moved her eyes away, whispering, sometimes there is indeed a little bit. Long N nodded with relief, as long as it wasn't his own fault. Curelia and Videlpin, who had regained their human form, were led by Ryan, walking in front of the mercenaries guarded by the goblins, and arrived at the goblin settlement. Videlpin, who kept complaining while holding his head, was attracted by several goblins weeding the potato field. Is this a farmland? Yes, it's planted with small potatoes dug in the wild. Although the yield is not high, it is enough to feed the goblin clan. Ryan had unknowingly removed the word wild in front of the goblin. It's really strange that there are goblins who can farm. In the impression of the world, goblins are cunning, evil, and violent monsters. They only know how to light fires and explosives everywhere, and then steal food and property in the chaos. But the goblins here actually give people an inexplicable sense of order. Ryan smiled and said, these are all Lord Long's orders. He ordered the goblins to start farming and raising livestock after they become self-sufficient through hunting. Ryan pointed to the mud-walled thatched shed at the end of the potato field and said, over there are chicken coops and barns. They are all used to raise the young cubs caught during hunting. However, the livestock they raised were only long-haired cattle and hornless sheep. The cubs of other animals either got sick easily or refused to eat, so they had to give up in the end. The crowd passed by the stone house that Ryan had built with his own magic and now had partitions arranged inside. The female goblins twisting rattan ropes stretched their necks curiously and observed the mercenaries under guard, making them feel uncomfortable. The braver female goblins chatted with the goblins and the guard team for a few words, then stopped talking and looked at the mercenaries with a look of relief. The mercenary girl who had asked Longen earlier lowered her voice and nervously asked her companions beside her, "Do you know what they are saying? Are they saying that they want us to be slaves and work for them?" Ryan in front laughed and said, "They are asking if you are today's prey." The goblin guarding you said no, and they said that's good. You look similar to me and my sister, and they can't eat you. The mercenaries were sweating. When passing by a newly built wooden and stone structure house, Videlpin and Curelia keenly heard the sound of the slightly strange only a common language coming from the house. Next to the open wooden window of the house, a bald little goblin head quietly poked out, curiously looking at so many creatures that looked very similar to Ryan, and then was dragged back by a human hand holding his pointed ears. "Why don't you save my second knife, Teacher Tina? Don't pull my ears." "Tina?" Curelia felt Tina's breath, and her question was answered affirmatively by Ryan. Soon, there was a loud cheer from the house, and then a group of young goblins pushed open the wooden door and rushed out. The tourism group consisting of mercenaries and dragons passing by looked at them curiously, but did not dare to get close. A brave goblin cub picked up a piece of dry soil and hit a mercenary's butt, and then was immediately dragged away by a slightly older goblin cub under the mercenary's speechless gaze. While dragging, you can hear them scolding, "Don't obey the rules. You will be punished to do homework. Don't throw mud around. You will be punished to do homework." The last goblin cub ran out of the house, and Tina walked out of the house and closed the wooden door with her backhand. "Sister Curelia." Tina ran to Curelia's arms and hugged each other excitedly. After a brief reminiscence, Curelia asked her doubts. "You asked me what I was doing just now." Tina smiled helplessly. "I was arranged by Lord Long to teach the little goblins a common language class. In his words, my current position is a supporting teacher. Rich regions support general education teachers in remote mountainous areas." After repeating this long string of randomly put together words, a row of question marks appeared on Curelia's head. She understood each word, but it was a bit difficult to understand when they were put together. "This evil guy actually opened an academy." Videlpin muttered slightly distressedly. This evil and insidious blue dragon didn't seem as bad as she thought, and these goblin families didn't behave like evil monsters. They were not frantic and bloodthirsty, but seemed orderly and regular. Maybe I hit the wrong dragon? Although I didn't win. To be more precise, I was knocked unconscious by the other party's slap, but she selectively forgot about it. The proud golden dragon Videlpin was unwilling to admit that there seemed to be something wrong with the process and results of his execution of justice, but her sense of justice would not allow her to go against the will of justice and morality. Miss Golden Dragon fell into a state of confusion. Passing through the goblin settlement, she came to Long's dragon nest. Long had been waiting here for a long time, motioning everyone to sit on the relatively flat stone that the goblins had just moved. Long said, "You're welcome, just treat it as your own home." The two dragons and the mercenaries. Long did not blush or feel his heart beating. In the early stage of starting a business, it was not good to be too extravagant. The boss living in a cave and sitting on a stone can show his diligence and simplicity. Videlpin, who was uneasy, found a stone to sit on. It happened that the stone that was not placed steadily shook, and the whole person fell forward and knelt on the ground facing Long. Longen, there's no need for such a big ceremony. Videlpin, everyone. Longen was about to speak to ease the awkwardness, but he saw Videlpin with a desperate expression. "I'm sorry. It's my fault. Please forgive me." Chapter 14 Blood and Glory. Although it is said that some gold dragons will feel heavy guilt after fighting evil and find that they have accidentally hurt innocent people and then try to make amends, Long said that he was still scared. Videlpin's face turned red and he was anxious and angry. Broken stone. It was not flat. Doesn't this blue dragon have some decent furniture? But as a gold dragon with noble character and yearning for justice, it is better to pretend to apologize sincerely than to let people know that he actually fell because he didn't sit firmly, which would be too embarrassing. In fact, it is also quite embarrassing. Corellia looked up at the ceiling of the cave with a calm face, pretending not to see her friend's embarrassment. This stalactite ceiling is really good. The mercenaries were embarrassed and wanted to laugh, but no one dared to laugh out loud. After seeing Vedelpun's huge golden dragon body, they couldn't guarantee that, if they offended the real dragon, they would disappear inexplicably one day. Although it was rumored that the golden dragon had a strong sense of justice, they still didn't dare to bet their lives on the rumor. The mercenaries could only turn their heads away and count the cracks on the cave wall and the pebbles on the ground, indicating that they saw nothing. Long N sighed. To be honest, he was a little exhausted. Even if this golden dragon girl was not smart, there must be a limit. He silently said, "My dear, please stand up," in his heart. Long N condensed two palm-sized dragon hands and helped Vedelpun, whose face was red and about to drip water, up. "It's all a misunderstanding." Long N tried to pretend that he didn't care. "And I didn't suffer any substantial losses. I apologized, and let's turn the page on this matter. Let's talk about your purpose, everyone." Long N's eyes passed Corellia, who wanted to speak, and signaled the mercenaries to speak first. There were more than 10 mercenaries, half of whom claimed that they did not understand the dangers of the dragon's nest. They came to explore the dragon's nest under the organization of the 6th level swordsman. According to the swordsman, detailed information about the dragon's nest could be worth tens of thousands of gold coins. Half of them said that this swordsman wanted to form a team to complete the bounty for the capture of the Ryan brothers and sisters, and that they knew a group of people would go to find the lair of the blue dragon that was recently rumored, so they simply went into the Storm Mountains together. The rest were new mercenaries who knew nothing and were fooled into joining the team by other mercenaries to be cannon fodder at critical moments, such as the mercenary girl who asked Long N. Although he felt ashamed, Long N knew that this was how mercenaries in this world survived. Maybe they were also cannon fodder when they first entered the industry. After the explanation, the dozen or so mercenaries were vaguely divided into two small groups. One group was the old-time mercenaries who were looking for cannon fodder, and the other group was the young mercenaries and cannon fodder mercenaries who still had conscience and a sense of justice. Ignoring the thoughts of these humans, Long N looked at the last mercenary, the 6th level swordsman, who was whipped away by Long N's tail and was covered in blood. He was saved by the healing spell of the silver dragon Corellia. I was ordered to find and ensure the killing of Ryan Leon and Tina Leon. The seriously injured swordsman closed his eyes, as if he had accepted his fate. "Are you from the Morph family?" Ryan and Tina's faces were as gloomy as the dark clouds containing thunderstorms. The swordsman did not respond, but turned his head away. Long N, who was watching coldly, manipulated his mental power and quickly condensed a pair of dragon hands to pry open the swordsman's upper and lower jaws. The moment the dragon hand appeared out of thin air, the swordsman squeezed his back teeth frantically, but he could not do anything after being tightly grasped by the dragon hand. Two dragon hands pried open the upper and lower jaws respectively, and another dragon hand appeared out of thin air and punched the swordsman in the face. Finally, the dragon hand pulled the swordsman's hair and shook out the teeth that fell out of his mouth. Among the back teeth mixed with saliva and blood, one of them exuded a strong curse. Looking at the changes in front of them, the mercenaries didn't understand that they were all deceived by this swordsman. Someone is not telling the truth. Long N looked at the swordsman with a half smile. The swordsman's face was full of determination, and blood flowed from the corners of his tightly closed mouth. "Do you want to die so much?" Long N snorted coldly, and the powerful dragon power gathered and pressed towards the swordsman. The eyes of Corellia and Vedelpun, who reacted instantly, changed into vertical pupils, and they all released the dragon power against the swordsman. Long N released several charmed humans in a row, and the swordsman was stunned on the spot with drooling like an idiot. The already seriously injured 6th level swordsman was targeted by the dragon power of 3 real dragons, and then affected by a series of charmed humans with strong mental shocks from Long N, and his will was almost on the verge of breaking. Long N glanced at the swordsman's dilated pupils and said to Ryan, "It's a bit too much, but it's still useful. If you have anything you want to ask, just ask." I can't guarantee how long his soul can last. Ryan took a deep breath to calm himself down. What is your purpose? Who sent you? The dazed swordsman opened and closed his mouth slowly with bloody saliva. Order. Elemental finale. Bring back. Mover. When elemental finale came out of the swordsman's mouth, Ryan's clenched fist suddenly tensed and then relaxed, as if nothing had happened. But it was too deliberate and Long En noticed it at once. Long snorted in his heart and thought, he is still too young. Did the new King's faction collude with the Model family? Yes. Ryan clenched his fists and asked calmly, were you present during the night attack on Lionheart Carter Castle? Yes. Ryan closed his eyes and then heard Long say, I'm very satisfied with your work. According to human rules, I have to pay you a little reward. Now he is yours. Thank you for your generosity. Ryan dragged the swordsman's collar out of the cave. Tina and Kirelia looked at Ryan's back with some concern. Long said, young and energetic boys should not be suppressed. It is good to vent. After a while, Ryan, who had cleaned his body with water ball magic, returned to the cave. Sister Kirelia, don't worry, I'm fine now. Ryan smiled reluctantly. Can you tell me about Boren's current situation? Kirelia briefly recounted what happened after Ryan and Tina were sent away. So Uncle Niklaus and little Lumiere are still alive. Kirelia comforted, they are temporarily staying in my parents' dragon's nest now. They are very safe. They are very worried about you. Kirelia looked at Long En who was resting with his eyes closed. Seeing that he had no intention of stopping her, she said to Ryan, come back with me. Ryan, go back. Ryan smiled helplessly. Sir Silvereyes will never interfere with the human kingdom. If I go back with you, I'm afraid I will never be able to return to Bolan again, right? Kirelia sighed. My father really can't interfere with human society, but Ryan, you can go to a new land and start a new life. You will reproduce the glory of Lionheart. Ryan was silent for a moment and said in a hoarse voice, take Tina away, Sister Kirelia, I want to stay in Bolan. As if seeing the determination in Ryan's eyes, Kirelia nodded slowly, but heard Tina say angrily, the glory of Lionheart will never reappear on those who retreat. I want to stay in Bolan too. Chapter 15 Bahamut's Gaze. The Ryan siblings chose to stay in Boran, and Kirelia was mentally prepared for this. She came to find the Ryan siblings only because of the friendship they had played together, and to fulfill her father's promise to an old friend of the Lionheart family who had passed away hundreds of years ago. The surviving people of the Lionheart family were found by her father, but there were many who refused to go to a new land and start a new life. Long had originally thought about who should take over their work after the Ryan siblings left, but he didn't expect that they all stayed in the end. After the matter of the Ryan siblings was settled, Ryan looked at the mercenaries who were vaguely divided into two groups and said to Kirelia, I don't mind you letting them go, but they know too much. Is there any way you can make them keep their mouths shut? Although only the dead can keep secrets, Long had promised Kirelia to let them live, and naturally he would not break his promise casually. This is simple, let them swear to the great god of good dragon with me and Vidalpin. Bahamut will also care about such trivial matters. This was beyond Long's imagination. He will be pleased with our kindness. Kirelia said seriously. In the name of Bahamut, the god of bash and dragons, I, Kirelia, will take you to a safe place, but you need to swear not to tell others what happened here. Are you willing? The mercenaries nodded hurriedly, seizing this chance to survive, fearing that Kirelia would change her mind if she hesitated for a second. Long En watched Kirelia and Vidalpin swear an oath with the human mercenaries. As their oaths sounded, he felt a majestic but gentle and kind gaze coming here across an endless distance. The gaze swept across everyone and finally moved to Long En, but paused for half a second and then slowly dissipated. Long En felt a little itchy on his neck, and just as he was about to scratch it, he saw Vidalpin and Kirelia staring at him with an expression as if they had seen a ghost. Long En had a bad feeling in his heart. Why are you looking at me like that? Following their gaze, Long En looked down and found that among the sapphire-like scales on his neck, a silver-white dragon scale emitting colorful glimmers was naturally arranged among them, as if it was no different from the original, except that the color had changed a little. Fuck. What is this? It can't be psoriasis, right? Long En pulled at his scales, but found that the silver-white scale grew from his body. This is a reward from His Majesty Bahamut. This time it was Long N's turn to look like he had seen a ghost. He was a 5-color blue dragon, so why would he, a metal dragon god, give him a reward? Vidalpin looked at Long N with complicated eyes. If she was still a little hesitant about her previous apology, now that Long N had Bahamut's endorsement, it was even more impossible for him to be an evil dragon. It was Curelia who came back to her senses first and said, "This is the great Bahamut's affirmation of your true kindness and deeds. His reward and grace are not limited to metal dragons. Anyone with good intentions will be protected by him." Long N really couldn't figure out what great good thing he had done to make the good dragon god descend his divine power, so he conspiratorially speculated that this was a mark Bahamut put on him, which would keep him under his surveillance forever. Thinking of this, Long N withered again. It seemed that the great metal dragon god didn't need to be so troublesome to deal with him. Moreover, he, who had the title of pure good dragon, obviously would not use such low and bad means. He was not Shyamut. Shyamut, who was far away in a different dimension, sneezed. As the powerful 5-colored evil dragon god, Shyamut clearly caught the strange feeling that flashed through his heart just now, but he couldn't find the source of this strange feeling. This is really strange. Usually, if an intelligent creature chants or silently recites his name in his heart, he can sense the creature calling him. It is rare that he can clearly feel the call, but cannot find the source of the call. Shyamut narrowed his eyes and speculated about this unusual feeling with the most vicious guess. He, who never lacked enemies, immediately prepared to deal with various ambushes, sneak attacks, and plots. Long N studied the silver-white scales on his neck. In addition to feeling that it can make him absorb elemental energy a little stronger, he did not find any other functions. That's it? Long N looked at the silver white scales speechlessly and muttered, "Bahamut is too stingy to give a good reward." The two dragon girls, you can't slander his majesty Bahamut. Although it feels that it is not very useful, it is better than nothing. At least it has no harm. Moreover, the scale with the aura of Bahamut is not to say that it has no other uses. Not to mention that this scale can easily gain the trust of metal dragons or other creatures of the good camp. Just prying this scale off and selling it to Bahamut's believers can exchange for a lot of gold coins and gems. After dealing with the mercenaries' problems, Curelia took Vidalpin away first. They would send the mercenaries back to the border of the Principality of Balan. Only the siblings Long and Ryan were left in the cave. "You still stay here to talk to me?" Long lowered his head and looked at Ryan with a smile. Ryan hesitated and said, "You should have noticed the final chapter of Element. Don't you plan to ask about it?" Long N shook his head and said, "The reward for saving you has been agreed upon and will not be changed. Obviously, the final chapter of Element you mentioned is not included in the previously agreed reward. Everyone has their own secrets. As long as it does not harm me, I'm not interested in exploring it. In addition, you are not my subordinates, but just temporary tenants. I have no right to ask about your secrets." Ryan was obviously relieved, and then said respectfully, "You are a well-deserved lawful person, worthy of the attention of the god of good dragon." Long N just wanted to laugh after hearing this. It was because you have a good work attitude and there are dragons protecting you behind you. If it was someone else, Long N really couldn't say whether he would do it or not. It seems that you seem to be carrying some extraordinary blood feuds. Since you did not choose the path provided by Curelia, what are you going to do next? Hearing Long N's words, Ryan and Tina's faces became a little gloomy. I learned from Curelia that the forces that had joined forces to beat the Lionheart family into a rebel group and destroyed the Lionheart family had relaxed martial law, and only a small number of wanted posters were posted. If the Ryan brothers and sisters were willing, they could return to the capital of Boran now. We hope to stay here for the time being. It would be useless for us to go back now. Don't worry, we will continue to pay the agreed rent. Long N shook the faucet. Forget about the rent. Just consider it as an offset to the employment fee I should pay. You are welcome to stay here, excellent employees. Chapter 16 Elite Monster. After Curelia and Vidalpin left with the mercenaries, the goblin settlement resumed normal work and production. While enjoying the long-haired cattle offered by the goblin hunting team, Long listened to Ryan's work report. The reclamation of farmland has been temporarily stopped, and the estimated output is enough to support the autumn replanting. Long was very satisfied with the planting of yams. After the first wave of yams was harvested, the goblins could barely achieve self-sufficiency, even if they stopped hunting. Moreover, the geographical conditions on the east side of the Storm Mountains are also very favorable. The towering Storm Mountains block the extreme natural weather of the Storm Sea on the west side, and the snow water from the mountains supplements the water resources. According to the records in the books, the temperature in the south of Onia is relatively high all year round, while the north has obvious four seasons. Long judged that this place should be located in the subtropics. According to the agricultural experience of the Principality of Balan, yams can be harvested 3 times a year. The current population of the family includes 198 goblins, 1,327 kobolds, and 434 goblins and kobolds with extraordinary combat power. Long N was very satisfied with the results of Ryan's monster population census, which was accurate to the single digit. The increase in extraordinary combat power also made Long happy. Long N didn't expect that the combat power of the family would double when he woke up from a sleep. After listening to the report and enjoying the delicious long-haired cattle, Long N ordered the kobold who was responsible for passing the message in the shadow of the corner of the cave to call a few key targets. Soon, a silver white goblin and 3 kobolds knelt down respectfully in front of Long N. Long N looked at the silver white goblin. "You, come here." The silver white goblin immediately ran to the place designated by Long N with joy. "Release the lightning you control and show me the power. I'm far from being able to control lightning in front of you, my great lord," the silver white goblin said respectfully. Long N smiled and said, "You speak the common language very well." The IQ of these mutant goblins seemed to have increased rapidly with the mutation. Not only did they learn the common language quickly, they could even say compliments. Goblins are creatures that evolve very quickly. Under the right conditions, they can change some simple physical characteristics to adapt to the environment in just a few days. In order to study this characteristic of goblins, a bored wizard captured more than 10 goblins and ordered the servants to beat the goblins with sticks every 2 hours and feed the goblins with the flesh and blood of extraordinary creatures to ensure that they always have sufficient physical strength. The experimental results were surprising. After being beaten 3 times in a row, the skin of these more than 10 goblins began to thicken and toughen to varying degrees. When the experiment lasted for 2 days, except for the goblins who died accidentally, the rest of the goblins began to grow skin like rhinoceros skin, and 2 goblins even grew protective spikes on their skin. But, they are still just weak goblins. In the end, the bored wizard got useless experimental results, and only the world where the goblins were injured was achieved. Long N thought that the intelligence of the goblin would gradually increase, but he did not expect that the mutation of the extraordinary nature would accelerate this process. Under Long N's command, the silver white goblin summoned lightning to fall on the stone beside it. After a bang, the 1-meter thick stone was directly split into a pile of fragments. Then the silver white goblin demonstrated several uses, such as summoning a row of lightning at a time, or summoning a circle of lightning. In the final analysis, they were all summoning lightning, very superficial methods of use. But Long N was very happy. He saw something from his previous life in this goblin. "Your ability is very good, and you will lead all the extraordinary goblins in the future." Long N paused and laughed. "You will be called Kino, Luole Kino in the future. The legendary goblin, the hand of thunder, the scimitar of the empire." The legendary life of Luole Kino began. Kino prostrated on the ground, trembling with excitement. "Thank you, my lord." Long N let it stand up, and silently added in his heart, "You should say thank you, Lord Long N." Looking at the 3 envious and jealous kobolds with amusement, Long N called the former kobold leader Jinjaro, who was covered in golden scales. "Have you awakened the dragon blood gene in your body?" Long N looked at Jinjaro, who had obviously grown a lot taller. Most real dragons are reluctant to mention the real dragon blood in kobolds, and even think that the existence of such inferior creatures is an insult to real dragons. But Long N obviously doesn't care about these. "Great master, great master, great master, as night falls on the tribe, we can have the honor to awaken the dragon vein." After sleeping for so long, Long N still had a headache when hearing the kobolds talking, and he sighed. After a demonstration, Long N understood the ability of the dragon vein kobolds. Two crops grew in Jinjiro's body, allowing it to spit out weakened versions of fire breath and weakened breath. Its physical strength and elemental resistance, especially fire element resistance, were also greatly enhanced, and it can also use summonate fire spells. These are obviously the characteristics of golden dragons, corresponding to the color of Jinjiro's scales. The same was true for the other dragon vein kobolds, who gained some dragon-like abilities corresponding to their body colors. Long N looked at Jinjiro. Because your body color doesn't match mine, you lost your position as leader. Do you feel resentful? Jinjiro crawled devoutly. No. Great master, it's my misfortune that I don't have scales of the same color as yours. It's because I'm not worthy of being the leader anymore, and I voluntarily gave up the position of leader. Seeing that Jinjiro was excited and didn't lie at all, Long N was very satisfied, and his headache was relieved a lot. The ability of these kobolds to flatter dragons is also increasing. It is estimated that they practiced a lot when Long N was asleep. Then you will lead all the dragon vein kobolds and kobold warriors from now on. Kneel and thank my master. Long N looked at the next kobold. They said, you are very smart. What's your name? This is a normal sized kobold with mottled scales that are not pure colors. There is a long piece of bright red scale on its face that extends from the left ear to the right corner of its mouth, like a bloody wound. Woof. My name is Scar. Woof. Great lord. Ryan had emphasized this strange dog-headed man. It seemed to have mutated into a very smart brain. Moreover, it was extremely talented in war. The previous battle that ambushed the mercenaries was designed and commanded by it. What Long, who did not have the dragon heritage, did not know was that this rare mutant dog-headed man was called Kobold Leader or Kobold Commander. They were natural military strategists. At the right time, they could exert incredible power. After briefly understanding the situation, Long, who had no war to fight for the time being, praised Scar and let him stand aside. The last dog-headed man, Blueear. Woof. Great lord. Master. Woof. Blueear, who had not undergone any mutation, was a little uneasy. Even some rumors spread among the dog-headed men, believing that it was not worthy of having the same scale color as their great master Long, and there were more and more calls to abolish it and re-elect a mutated blue-scale dog-headed man. Long N knew what Blueear was thinking, but according to Ryan, Blueear, which had not mutated, had put more effort into developing the territory, as if to make up for it. Long N was also very satisfied with its performance as the leader of the kobolds. Don't be nervous, you are doing a very good job as the leader of the kobolds, but I have also heard what the kobolds are saying about you. In the increasingly uneasy eyes and drooping ears of Blueear, Long N grinned and said, so I decided to grant you the dragon vein transformation. Overjoyed, Blueear excitedly woofed and barked, woof woof woof. Thank you, woof woof, woof, my lord. Woof. As the sun set, watching the retreating figures of Kino, Goldfoot, Scar, and Blueear in the night, Long N seemed to see the blue-named elite monster halos emerging from them. Please recommend and read on. Chapter 17, A Real Dragon Without Wings. Long N's life as a real dragon is very boring and dull. Apart from continuing to read various books to learn spells, he would go out to fly from time to time, but Long N enjoyed it. Whether it was studying spells to gain knowledge or flying in the strong wind, he felt happy. After immersing himself in spell research for half a month, Long N had mastered a bunch of second and third ring spells by himself. But when studying fourth ring spells, Long N encountered a little trouble. Fourth ring spells are already in the category of intermediate spells. Unlike first, second and third ring spells, when constructing spell structures, it is no longer just the superposition of straight line three-dimensional graphic structures, but also a large number of curved structures. The spell structure needs to be constructed in the mind little by little with mental power, and any slight flaw in the spell structure may lead to a longer casting time, increased mental power consumption, or even direct spell failure. After a short rest, Long N relaxed his brain, closed his eyes, and began to quickly calculate the arc and length of each curve. 2 hours later. It's not difficult, but the calculation is a little bit large. Long N looked at the fireball jumping on his fingertips with satisfaction. Big Fireball, a fourth ring shaping fire spell. is the first choice for mages who love explosions and equivalent to advance to the 4th ring. Feeling the warmth of the fireball as big as a human head on his fingertips, Long N was not deceived by its temporary harmless illusion. He could probably imagine what this fireball with powerful power would look like when it exploded. Well, if you only pursue explosive damage, this bunch of spell structures seem to be able to be changed, and this part should also be re-optimized. The impromptu transformation was not as simple as Long N thought. At the beginning, the changed spell structure could not be cast at all, or it simply extracted a large amount of Long N's mental power, but only released a small flame. After many modifications and adjustments, it can be cast, but either the condensed fireball exploded directly in Long N's hand before he threw it out, or there was only the sound of explosion and a shining fire, but no explosive power at all. It should work this time. Long N, who was covered in traces of smoke and fire, looked at the rotating fireball in his hand with a little uneasiness, and decisively gave up the idea of testing its power in the cave. Long N's intuition told him that the fireball spell, pure explosion version, after many adjustments would definitely cause him considerable damage. Letting the rotating fireball slowly dissipate, Long N thought thoughtfully, can simply adjusting the spell structure greatly change the form and nature of a spell? Just the change of the spiritual power of creatures can mobilize the dark sea that permeates the entire world and has endless energy. It's really a magical world. Lord Long N. Ryan's voice interrupted Long N's sigh. Ryan, who was promoted to the 3rd ring, completed the construction of the flying spell under Long N's guidance, and now flew straight to Long N's dragon nest. Seeing the anxious look on Ryan's face, Long N said seriously, "What happened?" Lord Long N, the Kobold tribe encountered trouble in their original residential area. They encountered another Kobold tribe, and that tribe seemed to be protected by a real dragon. This was not good news. The location of Long N's dragon nest was not far from the original residential area of the Kobold tribe. If his territory bordered another real dragon, it meant that his dragon nest might have been exposed to other dragons. But the problem was that I had never heard of a real dragon on the border of the Principality of Balan. Whether it was a 5-color dragon or a metal dragon, they would appear in front of humans passively or actively, especially since there were a large number of mercenaries and adventurers making a living in the Storm Mountains. If there were really real dragons, it would have been spread by mercenaries who lacked entertainment and could only go to Pink Alley for entertainment or brag in the tavern. After thinking for a few seconds, Long N said to Ryan, "Lead the way. If the other party is just a new young dragon, don't blame Long N for being ruthless if he offends him. If it is an adult dragon, then Long N will show the good dragon badge officially certified by the Platinum Dragon God, and the other party will have to give some face. Even the 5-color dragons respect the Platinum Dragon God, and will not easily offend the majesty of the Dragon God, just as the metal dragons also respect the 5-color Dragon Queen. These are our minds. You shameless robbers. Bullshit your mother. How dare you offend the land of the Storm Lord." The tall Jinjiro led a group of Dragonvein kobolds to confront a large group of ordinary kobolds and kobold warriors. Although they were few in number, they had the characteristics of Dragonveins, and their momentum was even higher. The kobolds on the opposite side looked at their tall bodies and the dragon-like horns on their heads, and their eyes were evasive and confused, but they still insisted on being tough, emphasizing that the mine they dug was this. It was precisely because Jinjiro saw that the other side was shrinking and couldn't call out the name of the real dragon that he called out the title he gave to Long N in his heart, Lord of the Storm. As expected by Jinjiro, the kobolds on the opposite side became more flustered after calling out this title. Obviously, the real dragon that the other side served was definitely not as powerful and mighty as my lord. That's why he didn't even have a title. A huge shadow suddenly passed over the sky of the confronting kobolds. Long N grabbed Ren N and flew over the kobolds, circling in the air. No other real dragons were found, so Long N was relieved to release the dragon's power. The confronting kobolds cheered in praise on one side and whimpered in fear on the other side. The 8-meter-long Long N flapped his dragon wings with a wingspan of more than 9 meters and fell from the sky. The golden feet brought the dragon veins and the kobolds prostrated themselves on the ground, praising the title of Lord of the Storm. The kobolds on the opposite side had weak legs, but never knelt down. Lord of the Storm? When did these kobolds come up with this title for themselves? Long N looked down at the kobolds on the opposite side with a majestic and arrogant face. The kobolds on the opposite side stared at him, some of them in disbelief, and looked at their leader in confusion. Woof, there are real dragons with wings. Woof. What real dragons with wings? Can there be real dragons without wings? Long N spread out his huge dragon wings, and fine static electricity crackled. Arcs like thunder snakes wandered between the azure scales, making Long N look extremely majestic. He whispered, "Kneel at my feet." The gnolls, who had been trembling in fear at the dragon, might released by Long N, immediately knelt down and trembled. Long N looked at the gnoll leader who was muttering real dragon with wings and said, "Raise your head and take me to see your master." Long N grinned with disdain. "I'm very interested in real dragon without wings. Thank you for your monthly ticket. Thank you for your recommendation ticket. Keep asking for recommendations and collections. I'm saving the manuscripts. I will update more when I'm recommended." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 18, Fire Lizard Dragon. Woof, great Lord of Storms. Woof, our master is here. Long N looked at the deep cave in front of him, which was filled with the smell of sulfur and scorching warm wind. It looked like a red dragon's lair, but with the temper of the red dragon, it might have flown out to fight Long N. As soon as he stepped into its territory, Long N released his dragon power into the cave without reservation. Among real dragons, releasing dragon power in advance is a way of greeting, but for other creatures, it is a naked threat and warning. Squeak. Strange threats and the friction between skin and rock came from the cave. Long N squinted his eyes, and his powerful dark vision allowed him to see the figure gradually emerging from the cave. It was a huge lizard with fiery red scales. It had a huge head, short limbs, and a row of sharp thorns growing on its neck extending to its back. Its huge orange-red eyeballs protruded outward, and it was staring at Long N vigilantly and solemnly at this moment. This was a fire-burning lizard dragon. Long N saw this creature in an illustrated book. Usually, fire dragons like to live underground, or choose to live in places with high temperature heat sources on the surface. Adult fire dragons can grow to 6 or 7 meters, and the fire dragon in front of him is more than 12 meters in size and its scales are beginning to turn white, indicating that it is an old fire dragon. Although it is not as good as the 5-color dragon and the metal dragon, the fire dragon also has the characteristic of being more dangerous as it ages. True dragon, die, my territory, leave. The big mouth on the huge head opened and closed, spitting out hoarse and low dragon language to threaten Long N. Long N looked at the fire dragon in surprise. Fire dragons have low intelligence. They are more like beasts than dragons, and the fire dragon in front of him can actually speak dragon language. But lizards are just lizards, and the difference between them and real dragons can be said to be a world of difference. Long N smiled contemptuously and said, "Is this the real dragon you worship? A lizard dares to call itself a real dragon?" The kobolds were so frightened that they dared not speak. The orange-red eyes of the fire lizard opposite them revealed anger. Not convinced, Long N looked at the fire lizard with contempt, but he was ready to deal with the attack. The fire lizard opened its huge mouth and spit out a ball of fire that was enough to completely cover Long N. Dragons have strong elemental resistance, but still have limits. Moreover, Long N is a blue dragon. He has strong resistance to lightning, but not much resistance to fire. The flames spit out by the old fire lizard are extremely hot. If he is hit, Long N will definitely be injured. Retarded intelligence is retarded intelligence. Even if you learn to speak, your brain still doesn't work well. The large ball of fire went out, and the thick white steam dissipated with the wind, revealing Long N wrapped in layers of water curtains. Although the 3-ring water wall spell could not stop the fire of the fire lizard, Long N kept applying 7 or 8 layers of water wall spells, which directly changed the quantitative change into qualitative change, and easily resisted the fire spitting of the fire lizard's full strength attack. It's my turn. Long N mobilized his mental power to trigger the 4th ring spell he had just constructed. After consuming enough mental power to use the 4th ring spell 4 or 5 times, Long N finally successfully cast the fireball spell with a greatly changed spell structure. A large amount of fire element gathered in Long N's hands and compressed into a small white ball that kept rotating. The huge power contained in it was trying to burst out all the time, and only by constantly rotating could it maintain a steady state. Long N threw the small white ball out and used his mental power to guide it to fly towards the fire lizard. While throwing, he shouted, "Perfect golden spin." Feeling the strong fire element on the flying attack, the fire lizard, which had no time to retreat into the cave, chose to use its back to resist the attack. The scorching flames that the fire dragon had expected did not appear, and its strong resistance to fire element certainly did not work as expected. The fire element compressed into a small ball hit the scales of the fire dragon, and the stable state that was maintained with great difficulty was immediately destroyed, and violent energy burst out in an instant. Boom. The compressed energy burst out with a powerful and pure force, tearing the scales and muscles of the fire dragon and flipping it to the ground. Enduring the severe pain in its bones and internal organs, the fire dragon, which was in fear, twisted its body and landed on all fours again, just wanting to retreat back to the depths of the cave. Still want to run? Long N flapped his wings and pounced on the fire dragon, grabbed the bone layer on the edge of its big head, and forcibly pulled the fire dragon out of the cave. Long N stepped on the fire dragon's head with his forelimbs, extinguished the flames coming out of its mouth, and said, "Submit to me, and I will allow you to continue to live." Long N looked directly into the fire dragon's eyes, and suppressed the dragon's power at the same time. The fire lizard slowly moved its eyes to the ground, and finally made a grunt sound in its throat to show its submission. Long N released his claws, and threw a few healing spells at the fire lizard. Now that he is his younger brother, the treatment is naturally different. Besides, it is his loss that he is injured and can't work. The power of the pure explosive version of the fireball was somewhat beyond Long N's expectations. The strength of this old fire lizard was not top-notch. Apart from breathing fire, it had no more means of attack, but the toughness of its flesh could barely match that of a real dragon. Otherwise it would not be classified as a dragon creature. But it was blown to pieces by the pure explosive version of the fireball, and even a few bones were broken, and its internal organs were also damaged to varying degrees. However, this trick can only be used against creatures like the fire lizard that are not flexible and have no countermeasures. Long N found that, in order to maintain a steady state and not explode prematurely, this thing can't fly too fast after being thrown out. The practicality is too poor, and it can only be regarded as a useless spell, unless it can be further improved. After announcing on the spot that the Kobold tribe had been accepted as his own, Long N left Jinjio and his excellent employee Ryan in charge of the recruitment work. After taking another look at the fire dragon and warning it not to escape, Long N flew directly back to the dragon's nest. The growth of the family made Long N happy, but what made the dragon even happier was the gems and ores hoarded by the newly recruited Kobold tribe. The recruitment of the new Kobold tribe was completed very smoothly, with the order of the real dragon. Some of the new tribe members were ordered to move to the underground under the dragon's nest, and some of the new tribe members continued to stay in place for the time being. The living space under the dragon's nest was not enough, so they had to build more for a while. Long N lay on the pile of treasures with a significant increase in gems and precious ores, playing with the high quality obsidian offered by the new tribe members, and summoned the fire dragon, which had regained its ability to move. The land of the new Kobold tribe members was a dead volcano, but there was still a lot of magma that had not completely cooled down, which was why the old fire dragon took a fancy to it. They naturally like to build nests on heat sources. Some adventurers will even find little fire-burning lizard dragons that have just been expelled by their parents next to their campfires. They are attracted by the heat of the campfire and regard the adventurer's camp as a safe nest. This is why the new family can offer high-quality gems. The volcanic area is always full of the environment and conditions for the formation of gems. After a simple exchange, Long N figured out the origin of this fire-burning lizard dragon. It just came here more than a year ago. After choosing a nest with suitable conditions, it subdued the tribe of kobolds who came to check the situation, and then it has been sleeping in the cave. Therefore, almost no creatures around here know the existence of this fire-burning lizard dragon. You said you ran to the ground to escape from a strange ghost wandering in the underground ruins? Long N looked strange. He felt as if he had received some extraordinary side quest. The work has been renamed Blue Dragon Emperor, Thunderlord, and the cover will be made soon. Thank you for your support. Chapter 19, Fraud. According to the fire lizard, it was a huge ruin buried deep underground. It was accidentally attracted by the high heat emitted by a machine that was still running in the ruins, and finally found an undead spirit covered in a black robe in the ruins. The undead spirit kept wandering around the ruins, and the fire lizard was almost discovered by it several times, or it might have been discovered, but for some reason, the undead spirit ignored it. Did you slowly master the ability to speak after leaving the underground? Long N narrowed his eyes. Did your brain work better after leaving the underground? How could it be such a coincidence? I'm afraid that the undead spirit subtly transformed the fire lizard's brain through some means in order to let the fire lizard spread the existence of it and the underground ruins. Although the fire lizard's IQ is not high, as a dragon creature, its resistance to mental aspects is not weak. The fire lizard, whose strength barely reaches a high level of level 7, can even directly exempt mental spells below the middle level. Then, how terrifying is the power of the strange undead who quietly changed the brain and soul of the fire lizard dragon and made a beast with low intelligence learn to speak. At least a legendary level of undead, Long N thought. The ruins buried deep underground, the machine that is still running after who knows how many years, is really a technology that makes people care. Long N silently remembered this matter. Before he had enough strength, he would not go to explore the ruins. Even if he was a real dragon, he might suddenly die one day, if he wanted to die at will. The right way is to live first. The moon at night became more and more golden, and began to fade gradually. The golden month was halfway through. Long N, who was leisurely, finally waited for Kirelia and Vidalpin. Two elegant real dragons, one gold and one silver, landed on the platform at the entrance of a cave, and their forms changed into human forms during the landing process. Some gold dragons and silver dragons are keen to transform into humans, elves or half-elves, and live in their society. Some gold dragons and silver dragons may even build their nests in human cities. Long time no see, two beautiful ladies. Long N welcomed them from the bottom of his heart. It was agreed before that the mercenaries would be compensated for releasing them. Long N would not forget the compensation he deserved, just because a platinum dragon god died one of his scales. Kirelia and Vidalpin sent the mercenaries away. The two dragons were gone for more than 10 days. If they were not famous for being honest and trustworthy gold and silver dragons, Long N would have thought he had met a deadbeat. After sending the mercenaries away, we first returned to my parents' dragon nest. It took a lot of time to go back and forth. Kirelia explained. This is your compensation. Kirelia took out a heavy ancient book from her space ring. On the cover was written Oslatov spell notes in simple and clear words. Ryan said you like to study spells, so I chose one from my father's collection of spell notes. At the end, she added, with my father's consent. Long N was a little disappointed that it was not gold coins and gems, but the spell notes were also good. Long N, who could only learn spells by himself, needed various spell notes for reference. Besides, it seemed unlikely to ask a dragon to voluntarily give out his treasure. Long N suspected that the two gold and silver dragons in front of him did not even have their own treasures. After all, gold and silver dragons were raised by their parents and would not have any chance to save up their own small treasury until they went out to travel. Dragon Hand took the notes and threw them into the storage ring hidden under the scales, and then looked at Kirelia and Vidalpin solemnly. Being a little scared by Long N's look, Vidalpin couldn't help but ask, "What do you want to do?" The value of this notebook is definitely more than a few mercenaries. You misunderstood. Beautiful ladies. Long N looked at the two dragons with the most sincere and genuine smile. I just thought that according to the habits of gold dragons and silver dragons, you should be traveling together now, right? The two dragons didn't understand Long N's purpose, so they could only nod first. Long N smiled and said, "Why don't you just travel here for a while, during which time I will hire you to work for me. Please rest assured that I will pay you with gold coins." Hearing about gold coins, the two women's eyes lit up. Since they started traveling, they were restricted from revealing their true dragon identities at will, and as good dragons, they couldn't do illegal work that made money quickly. They only earned more than 100 gold coins through legal means. These gold coins can allow ordinary humans to live a very rich life, but for real dragons, they are too poor. But Corellia was the first to shake her head and said, "No, sorry, we can't accept your employment. According to the plan, we should go to the southernmost tip of Onia next. Only by traveling far can we see more scenery." Vidalpan sighed regretfully, and then echoed, "Yes." Long shook his head. Traveling is not just about traveling far. More often we should stop and carefully observe the things around us. Traveling is to increase our knowledge and enrich our experience. Can these only be done by traveling far? Whether it is the scenery you see on the journey or the things you experience, they are only part of the travel. Therefore, even if you become a mercenary to protect the caravan, become an adventurer to explore ruins, or become a farmer to cultivate the land, it is a kind of travel. And it just so happens that I'm short of helpers here. I will pay gold coins for hiring you. You will help your friends while getting gold coins. This is a win-win situation for everyone. Corellia and Vidalpan fell into deep thought together. What this guy said seems to make sense. Corellia hesitated and said, "But, no buts." Longen looked at Corellia with sincere eyes. "I promise, I will never let you help me do something that goes against your principles. I'm a good dragon certified by the Platinum Dragon God." Seeing the two women looking at the silver white dragon scales on their necks, Longen struck while the iron was hot and said, "Even if you work for me for a year, for a real dragon, it's just a waste of time to sleep, and in just 1 year, both of you can get a reward of 8,000, no, 10,000 gold coins." "Okay, I agree." Vidalpan shouted suddenly, causing Corellia, who was struggling on the side, to give up her struggle. She nodded helplessly and excitedly, indicating that she also agreed with Longen's proposal. "That's 10,000 gold coins." Relying on conventional means, it doesn't know how long it will take for the two younger dragons to earn so many gold coins. Longen showed a barely perceptible smile of triumph. Of course he would give the gold coins, but not now. He would only transfer the debt owed by Ryan to the two women and one dragon. But why did he feel so sad to spend the gold coins that were not yet in his hands? Chapter 20 Personal Action. Junjie worshipped his master even more. After all, only a master as powerful as his could be admired by two female true dragons at the same time. The news of the two true dragons landing at the entrance of Longen Cave spread throughout the tribe. Especially after they did not see the two true dragons flying out again, they talked more enthusiastically, praising the Lord of Storms and their powerful and persistent master. The three dragons in question were completely unaware of this. Otherwise some unfortunate kobolds might be roasted into charcoal or frozen into popsicles by the two beautiful dragon ladies. "How was your rest?" "Very good." Corellia and Vidalpan seemed very excited. They chose two higher hills nearby and built a simple dragon nest for themselves with the powerful claws and magic of dragons. A dragon nest of their own. Corellia, who grew up with her parents, and Vidalpan, who was fostered by her parents with human friends, received a good education since childhood, but also faced the constraints of strict rules. For them, having their own dragon nest was a break from the strict rules, which brought them a strange sense of novelty and excitement. Just like a well-behaved girl who was suppressed by a strict family education and stayed up all night playing League of Legends in the internet cafe. In fact, the two excited teenage dragons did not rest at all. They spent the whole night decorating their nest with beautiful stones, grass, vines, and flowers grown by magic. They did not have enough gold coins and gems, nor did they have the exquisite artworks and magic equipment they preferred, but the simple and poor dragon nest was enough to satisfy them. "Well, as a gift to celebrate your first dragon nest in your life, I prepared this for you." Longen handed two fist-sized high-quality rubies to Corellia and Vidalpan with some pain. These were originally given to Longen by the kobold families who lived on the edge of the extinct volcano. The kobold families had hoarded hundreds of such gems, but giving away two of them still made Longen feel heartbroken. Kobolds are not only good at mining, but also have gem craftsmen who can process and polish raw gems. The 2 rubies that Long N picked out were both finely polished, and the complex facets made the 2 rubies shine brightly in the sunlight shining into the cave. Such gems are not only treasures, but also exquisite works of art, which just hit Curelia and Vidalpin. Wow. The 2 women held the shining gems, and couldn't take their eyes off them. It's not that they haven't seen better gems than this, but those don't belong to them. Long N kept repeating in his heart, "You can't catch a wolf without sacrificing a child," and said with a stiff smile, "Ladies, let's start the first job now." The 2 women put away the gems, and they immediately got into work mode after getting the benefits in advance. Well, as you know, my followers have reclaimed a piece of farmland, but they are still planting wild yams found in the wild. The yield is not very high. Now we need to buy a batch of yams with high yield before the autumn and winter farming begins, as well as iron farm tools and iron pots. The 2 women who listened to Long N's words looked a little strange. They were the first goblins who knew how to farm, and the first real dragons who spent so much energy on their followers. For other real dragons, followers are something that can be abandoned and replaced at any time. When they were still weak, they took in some weak followers, such as kobolds, goblins, and gnolls. When they gradually became stronger, they took in some powerful followers, such as tauren, dragons, storm giants, or cloud giants. Weak followers either become stronger or are eliminated. The attitude of real dragons towards them has always been dispensable. But Long N, he is so kind to his weak followers. Feeling that Long N was indeed a good dragon recognized by the Platinum Dragon God, Curelia said, "The Principality of Barlin has a large number of yams. The human lord of Blackstone Town at the foot of the Storm Mountains can provide enough yams, but the Principality of Barlin seems to have recently begun to prohibit large-scale grain transactions. I'm afraid that human lord will not sell yams to us." Long N shook his head secretly. Metal good dragons are always too upright and too rigid to abide by the rules. What does it have to do with a small lord like him? If the king says he won't sell, if the price is right, it should be sold anyway. Of course, these things can't be left to these 2 simple and stubborn metal dragons to do. The Ryan brothers and sisters are still wanted, so Long N decided to go there in person and see how far the human society in this world has developed. The descriptions seen in books are always not real enough. Long N, who has no dragon heritage as a reference, can only experience it himself. After spending a day to construct the 4-ring transformation spell, Long called Ryan and Blueear and told them to take care of the goblins and kobolds. Then Long flew towards the border of Boron with Curelia and Vidalpin without any delay. As they rose to the sky, the whistling wind blew past their ears. The 3 dragons silently released the cloud spell to cover their figures, so that when looking up from the ground, one could only see a cloud that moved slightly faster. The fierce extraordinary creatures in the air sensed the breath of the 3 real dragons, and also avoided them in panic. At the flying speed of the real dragons, it took human mercenaries more than half a month or even longer to cross the dangerous forest, but they only took 2 hours. The 3 dragons quietly landed in an uninhabited dense forest and each changed into a human form. "Why are you looking at me like that?" Long asked in confusion. Long imitated Vidalpin's dress and changed into an adventurer's outfit, but under the clothes and cloak, he turned into a half-dragon with a blue-scaled dragon head. "Didn't you say that there are many humanoid mercenaries and adventurers in Blackrock Town? How about half-dragons?" Vidalpin made a sword flower and sheathed a sword, saying, "There are many other humanoids here, but half-dragons may not be seen once in 100 years. Blackrock Town just heard that there was a giant blue dragon nearby, and when they saw you, a half-dragon with blue dragon blood, they might think you were looking for your relatives." Long N was speechless. It was indeed a bit too high profile to say that. He could only change his appearance to a less conspicuous one. A half-human with a thin face, regular features, and a few scales on his face. After being a dragon for so long, it was a bit strange to become a human all of a sudden. It was much better to become the appearance of the previous life. Vidalpin watched Long N constantly fine-tuning the scales on his face, and couldn't help but say, "Can't you just turn into a human? It would be much easier." Long N joked, "How can you create a pure human in a group game?" Before Vidalpin could ask what a group game was, Long N walked towards Blackrock Town and waved his hand, saying, "Okay, let's go, beautiful ladies. Adventurers must get into town before dark. Thank you for the reward. Thank you for the recommendation votes, and continue to ask for votes and collections." Chapter 21 Blackstone Town. Long N looked up at the nearby Blackstone Town, where he could already see the houses. This was the first time he saw a human town since he came to this world, and he felt as if he was in another world. After coming to his senses, Long N walked straight into the town without stopping. This was a small town built along the river between hills and valleys. Although it was located on the border, it was not adjacent to any enemy country. There had never been any creatures in the Storm Mountains that would actively attack human towns, so there were no city walls or fences, and there was no need to pay any entrance fee. Most of the houses in the town were made of stone and wood, and they were rarely more than 2 stories high, which looked a bit rough and simple. Only a few houses were built of chiseled stone bricks, and the surface of the houses was painted with some kind of white dye, which was somewhat out of tune with the grey wood and stone colors around them. The roads between the houses were completely dirt roads. Fortunately, there was less rainfall on the east side of the Storm Mountains, so the feces of livestock and horses would not be mixed with the mud due to trampling, but the air still had some odor. Fortunately, the people living here are either adventurers or mercenaries, or poor people who provide various services to the above 2 types of people in order to survive. The desperate criminals and the poor do not care about this smell, but they regard it as evidence that they are still alive. Walking on the main road of the town, passing by houses, Long N frowned slightly and looked at the drunkards in the alley, who were emptied of their valuables and thrown into the alley, or the prostitutes who were wearing bright and revealing clothes and applying cheap makeup, leaning against the wall and looking at the passers-by coquettishly, numbly, or indifferently. Squeak. Long N pushed open the wooden door of the largest and best tavern in the town. A stumbling man with a drunken stink bumped into Long N, but it felt like he had hit a hard stone. "You son of a goblin. You don't have eyes when you walk." Ah. The sharp pain and snapping sound from the wrist interrupted the man's scolding, turning into a cry of fear, and the pretended drunkenness disappeared instantly. Ron increased the force on his hand, causing the hand that was reaching for the purse on his waist to break its bones more evenly and thoroughly. "If I were you, I wouldn't be so stupid as to use my left hand to take out a knife after breaking my right hand." He threw the man out like a dead dog. Before Ron entered the tavern, he heard cheers and whistles from inside. Cheers to the scaly man who broke the hand of pickpocket Cam. Cheers to left-handed comforter Cam. Woohoo. Ha 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 ha. Ron pushed the wooden door open again and glanced at the group of mercenaries and adventurers who were cheering and laughing and toasting to him. "A glass of golden oak, free of charge. I think Cam won't come to my place again for at least 2 months. Oh, and 2 beautiful ladies. Do you want malt juice or berry juice?" Ron walked to the bar, picked up the glass filled with amber liquor, and drank it all. A deep woody aroma mixed with a heavy fruity flavor rushed straight to the humanoid sensory organs after the transformation, followed by an irritating alcohol and malt aroma lingering in the mouth. "Berry juice for the 2 ladies is also free. To celebrate your beauty." The middle-aged bartender smiled and imitated the posture of a musical actor to perform a gentleman's salute, but the hand that was about to take off the hat took off the wig. Looking at the bartender's shiny Mediterranean, Long N and the other 2. Ha 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 ha. Looking at Long N and the other 2 who were stunned, the tavern broke out into more boisterous laughter, and several mercenaries even laughed so hard that they lay on the table and pounded the table, their stomachs aching from laughing, and couldn't straighten their backs. "Just arrived in Blackrock Town, right? Do you need me to introduce some tourist attractions?" Go northwest out of the town. There is a Tauran tribe in a valley over there that welcomes foreign tourists very much, and they even hang the heads of tourists on the wall. The bartender put on the wig and jokingly mentioned several tourist attractions to Long N. Although this middle-aged bald bartender looked unreliable, he was actually warning Long N and other new faces who had just arrived in the town that there were dangerous places and they should not go there. Long N smiled and said jokingly, "I wonder if we can visit the Lord's house in Blackstone Town. It would be even better if we had a passionate and reliable tour guide." The bartender opposite was wiping the cup with a rag in his hand and looked at Long N with an expression as if, "Are you kidding me? Friend, maybe you should go out." Long N, HMM. The bartender said helplessly, "You should go out and look at the sign of the tavern, the Sword of Bray Tavern, and my boss is the Honorable Baron Bray. I have always been a good tour guide, and Baron Bray doesn't mind receiving all kinds of strange guests." The bartender leaned close to Long N's ear and said, "In fact, that greedy fat pig is very happy that someone would go to him to communicate. After all, he is too fat to go out. It only takes 30 gold coins, and you can share dinner with the Honorable Baron Bray, but I suggest you leave before dinner starts. A baron who can sell meeting and having dinner with nobles is more or less a talent." Long N took out 30 gold coins and pushed them to the bartender, but the bartender only took 11. Long N raised his eyebrows and saw the bartender stuffing a gold coin into his sleeve while saying in an exaggerated tone, "Oh, my guest, you are too good at bargaining. Well, 10 gold coins is the last bottom line of the Honorable Baron." Long N was happy. This bartender was also a wonderful person. It seemed that his Baron boss was very unpopular. The employees he hired would actually help customers bargain. After silently putting away the extra gold coins, Long N chatted with the more enthusiastic bartender for a while. The sky was completely dark. The street outside the tavern was dimly lit by the faint orange candlelight. The adventurers and mercenaries gradually dispersed. Long N knocked on the bar and said, "Old Haddo, open 2 clean rooms for me." "Oh, what a pity, I only have 1 clean room left." The middle-aged bartender Old Haddo blinked at Long N, and a "I understand" smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Long N was sweating in his heart. He really wanted to open 2 rooms. Long N put on an awkward look and said, "Are there any other rooms? They don't have to be too good." The bartender Old Haddo secretly gave Long N a thumbs up, and Long N seemed to hear him say, "Brother, you have good acting skills." In the end, the 3 people who only booked 1 room awkwardly walked up the stairs under Old Haddo's ambiguous eyes. There was only 1 big bed in the room. Kirelia and Videlpin slept on the bed, and Long N could just lie down in a corner. A real dragon could stay awake for several days without any rest. It made no difference to Long N whether he slept on the floor or on the bed. Looking down at the street from the slightly opened curtains, there were still a few thin and tall figures leaning against the wall in the alley opposite the tavern. The figures who had been standing for a day seemed a little stiff, and their numb and expressionless faces looked like corpses under the candlelight. Long N took a deep breath. Chapter 22 Baron. The 3-headed dragon, who had not rested all night, went downstairs at the opening time of the tavern, but did not see Old Haddo. The young and gloomy bartender who was wiping the glasses at the bar, Long asked and learned that Old Haddo was on his shift today. If he wanted to find him, he had to go to Pink Lane. Long did not ask any more questions, ordered 3 special breakfasts of the tavern, and asked Kirelia and Videlpin to sit down. "I didn't expect you to be interested in human food." Videlpin and Kirelia had frequent contact with humans since childhood, and they had no aversion to human food, although they still had to eat dragon food if they wanted to eat enough. But in their eyes, Long, who was in contact with human society for the first time, was actually interested in human food. It was rare for a blue dragon to like trying new things so much. No wonder they all jokingly called the alien dragon a freak dragon. Compared with other blue dragons, Long's performance was indeed like a freak. Long did not explain, and ate the roasted lamb ribs with rich spices and creamy potato and pea soup with big mouthfuls. When the dragon was used to eating big mouthfuls, he smacked his lips. Halfway through breakfast, Old Haddo came over. Touching his chest and giving an exaggerated gentleman's salute, Old Haddo said, "Dear guests, the Honorable Baron Bray thinks that your donation is too little and has decided to change the dinner to a lunch. If you are willing, please allow me to take you to the Baron's manor." This time he did not take off his wig. The specifications of the lunch were much lower than those of the dinner, and Baron Bray lived up to Old Haddo's evaluation of his greed. Long N and the 3 dragons even suspected that Baron Bray was also a dragon, at least in terms of stinginess and greed. He was almost comparable to a real dragon. After paying the bill, Long N collected all the copper coins that the bartender gave as change, without giving a single copper coin as a tip, and then walked out of the tavern under the bartender's resentful eyes. At this time, it was just dawn, and the mercenaries and adventurers were either in various taverns or in Pink Alley. There were only a few skinny poor people picking up horse manure on the road. There was no carriage to receive the nobles. The gold coins Long N paid caused this originally deserved treatment to be castrated, and everyone could only walk through the town. At the easternmost part of the town, a very large manor was located on the river valley plain created by the river. This was the most fertile land in the entire barony of Bray, and it was planted with white wheat for the upper class to eat, and the green wheat waves were full of vitality. When they arrived at the gate of the manor, Old Haddo nodded and bowed to the two soldiers guarding the manor. After handing a few silver coins to the soldiers' outstretched hands, a soldier turned and walked into the manor. Old Haddo walked over and said to Long N, "Low-class people like me cannot enter the manor. The servants of the Baron will take you in later." After waiting for more than half an hour, the gate of the manor slowly opened. A maid with two braids and freckles on her face said timidly, "3 adults, please follow me." 99% of mercenaries and adventurers are extraordinary people. For ordinary civilians, people like Long N are all adults. Lord Baron hasn't gotten up yet. Mr. Butler told me to take the 3 adults to the reception room to rest first. Oh, right. The 3 adults can call me Amy. You can tell me if you need anything. Mr. Butler said that the lunch banquet will start at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and Lord Baron will come to the reception room to meet the adults on time at 11 o'clock. Clocks have long existed in this world. At first, they were used in the bell towers of some churches to tell time, so that believers could pray to the gods on time. It was not until later that they were transformed by craftsmen to the size of a cabinet that nobles began to buy miniature clocks to show their virtue of punctuality. As a noble, Baron Bray owns the only clock in the whole territory. He bought it after he was mocked by other nobles for not even having a clock when he attended a banquet hosted by a viscount. When they arrived at the reception room to wait, the maid Amy went out and brought them a pot of black tea and carefully poured it for Long N and the other two. For a real dragon with a long lifespan, a few hours of waiting would be more time consuming than a rest. Long N was not impatient at all, but looked at the furnishings in the reception room. Furniture carved from expensive wood, carpets woven from lamb wool. This set must cost thousands of gold coins, right? This is just a baron in a remote countryside. Long N muttered to himself. The value should be between 800 and 930 gold coins. Corelia said. Although these furniture are worth nearly 1,000 gold coins, they did not attract the interest of Corelia, a silver dragon. Silver dragons prefer exquisite works of art, and the production and carving level of these furniture are far from being works of art. The clock struck 11, and the door of the reception room was finally pushed open on time. A tall, fat man with a bulging belly and buttons that could burst at any time walked into the reception room with the help of 2 maids, and squeezed into a chair that was only big enough for 1 person. The Baron, with a face full of fat and a pale complexion that was a little greasy, first glanced at Corelia and Vidalpin with his eyes shining, and then said arrogantly, "Welcome to Bray Manor. I'm Baron Cassius Bray." Facing the disgusting Baron Bray, Long N was too lazy to talk nonsense and said directly, "I need to buy a large number of grain seeds. Do you sell them?" Baron Bray first showed a happy expression, and then looked at Long N and the other two with a scrutinizing look. They didn't look like people who needed to buy a large amount of grain seeds. But it didn't matter. As long as he could pay the gold coins, it didn't matter to him, even if the person opposite him was dressed like a beggar. Baron Bray immediately made an embarrassed expression and said, "The relationship between the Principality and the Kingdom of Facity is tense now. They are hoarding grain and shipping it to the northeastern border. This is a well-known fact. When the collection order is issued, I must also contribute to the Principality. The grain on hand is very tight." Long N interrupted directly and said, 20,000 kilograms of potatoes and 10,000 kilograms of white wheat seeds. I will buy them at a 30% premium. Baron Bray immediately agreed with great joy. 20,000 kilograms of potatoes and 10,000 kilograms of white wheat, and a 30% premium. This transaction is enough for him to earn more than 2,000 gold coins. After finalizing the details of the transaction, Long N left the manor directly. He still had to go to Blackstone Town to buy some other things. After Long N and the other two left, the fat Baron Bray's eyes which were squeezed into a slit by fat, flashed a greedy look. Long N was so generous that he concluded that Long N and the other two had more wealth that was not revealed. And this was on his territory. If Long N and his group really only had 3 people, he would not mind doing more profitable business. After all, he is in urgent need of a large sum of gold coins. Baron Bray called the butler and said in a cold tone, "Send a few people to keep an eye on them." Chapter 23 Attack on Titan. After leaving the manor, Old Haddo hadn't left yet, waiting for Long N and the others to come out. After walking a distance, Vidalpin couldn't help but say that Baron must be an evil person. Long N said indifferently, "Anyone with eyes can see it." "You knew you were still trading with him?" Vidalpin looked puzzled. This human is greedy by nature, and even ignores the laws of his own kingdom to do illegal things. He has already died. Long N. As expected of a golden dragon, the ingredients are pure enough. Long N didn't respond, but asked, "How long did you stay in Blackstone Town before?" "More than half a month." Vidalpin asked in confusion, "Why do you suddenly ask this? You have been in Blackstone Town for so long dressed as adventurers. Have you noticed those prostitutes?" Vidalpin frowned like a sword and said, "The alleys here are full of prostitutes." "What do you want to say? How much do they charge for one time or one night?" You are not so thirsty, are you?" Vidalpin was ashamed and angry. This guy actually said such a thing in front of him and Curelia. Moreover, there were 2 beautiful female real dragons around him, but he had no interest in them, but became interested in humans. Sure enough, all the alien dragons were freaks. 6 copper coins for one time, 12 copper coins for one night, sir. After they were respectfully sent out by the servants of the manor, Old Haddo bent down in front of them, paused for a moment and then said, "Young girls can increase their prices by 3 copper coins." Long N said lightly, 6 copper coins can only buy 1 kilogram of potato, 12 copper coins for 2 kilograms. Selling their bodies can only exchange for such a meager income. Have you ever thought about seeking justice for them? Vidalpin was entangled and puzzled. They pay their bodies, and the mercenaries pay copper coins. This is a legitimate business transaction. Long N shook his head and asked again, "Have you seen civilians in the town?" Vidalpin nodded hesitantly. "The yield of bull potatoes is very high, at least there is no problem in feeding the civilians, but the civilians in the town are abnormally thin, and even a large number of women are needed to engage in sex work to earn a little income." "What does this show?" Curelia said thoughtfully, "I seem to understand. This is caused by the Baron's exploitation of the people. He levied too much agricultural tax and resident tax, which made it difficult for the civilians to make a living. Then this evil guy should be dealt with." Vidalpin said angrily. Long N sighed. "Isn't it said that gold dragons are very smart?" "Sure enough, the physique of dragons cannot be generalized. Are you sure you want to execute a human noble privately? Don't forget your identity. Metal dragons default to not interfering with the normal operation of human society at will, especially gold dragons and silver dragons. Every rational and kind gold dragon and silver dragon will try to avoid interfering in human society because they know that they are too powerful and will inevitably cause unfair and unbalanced effects on human society, even if their starting point is good. This is inconsistent with their concept of fairness and justice. Then we should report him." Long N was completely speechless. "Report the nobles of the fiefdom? Report what? Collect heavy taxes? Exploit the people? People will only tell you, sorry, these are all in line with the laws of the kingdom for the lords of the fiefdom. What's more, even if you report it, it will most likely be ignored by the upper lords. Commoners reporting nobles? In the eyes of those nobles, this is simply a big joke." Looking at the Old Haddo who seemed to have heard nothing, Long N didn't continue. Long N knew that the nobles in this world had problems like Baron Bray to some extent. This was not something that could be solved by simply punishing one or a group of nobles. As long as the aristocratic system still existed, this kind of thing would never disappear. Back in the town, Old Haddo said goodbye and left, and Long N and the other 2 continued to buy other things. After listening to Long N's previous words, when Curelia and Vidalpin looked at the poor civilians and prostitutes around them again, in addition to pity, there was also a little anger towards the instigator in their eyes. After buying the necessary items, the 3 of them returned to the tavern. The grain would be traded tomorrow, and Baron Bray would have to spend some time processing the grain. Long N and the others would have to stay in the town for another day. When they were still some distance away from the tavern, Kirelia suddenly said in a low voice with sharp eyes, "Two people are following us." Long N, who was walking in front, spoke, but the voice came from their left. "Don't worry, keep going forward." Kirelia suddenly realized that Long N in front of her was just an illusion. Long N had already walked towards the alley on the side under the cover of the illusion. After quietly dealing with the two stalkers, Long N shook the blood off his hands and looked at the corpse with his throat torn open in front of him. Humans are really strange creatures. They are greedy and stupid and extremely fragile, but they also have some things that can be called the glory of human nature. Long N, a former human, sighed. Catching up with Kirelia and the others, Videlpin asked curiously, "Did that Baron do it? What did he want to do?" Long N said nonchalantly, "Nothing. It's just that this Baron is a little tired of living. Sending people to follow them privately is definitely not out of good intentions. As for the purpose, it doesn't matter. Long N just needs to know that the other party has ill intentions towards them. Didn't you say that we can't interfere with human society at will?" Long N smiled and said, "You metal dragons can't, but I'm a blue dragon. It's not uncommon for 5-colored dragons to kill people. But now let's complete the transaction first." Long N doesn't want to make things complicated for the time being. After one night, Long N visited Bray Manor as if nothing had happened and completed the transaction with Baron Bray, who also seemed to have nothing happened. When paying the gold coins, Long N was very generous and didn't have any reluctance. Anyway, he had decided to take them all back after a while. The three dragons walked out of Blackstone Town, and after confirming that there was no one around, they turned back into real dragons and rose to the sky under the cover of the cloud and mist. Kirelia and Videlpin, who were used to using human forms, did not feel anything, but Long felt refreshed after finally regaining his dragon form. Long thought that this might be related to the nature of the 5-colored dragons who hated turning into other creatures, especially weak creatures. In the eyes of the 5-colored dragons, only true dragons were the noblest creatures. They disdained to turn into humanoid creatures like the gold dragons and silver dragons. In the eyes of the 5-colored dragons, the gold dragons and silver dragons who liked to move in humanoid forms were simply freaks among the true dragons. Long knew very well that the nature of the true dragons had an increasingly obvious influence on him, and his mentality had been changing towards that of the true dragon. But he did not reject this change. Whether he was a human or a dragon, he was always himself, and that was enough. With his wings flapping, Long enjoyed the feeling of riding the strong wind for the first time in a long time. Suddenly, he noticed something a little abrupt at the edge of his vision. Wait, is there something moving in the woods to the north? Upon hearing this, Kirelia and Videlpin looked towards the north. In the dense woods, a large group of huge humanoid creatures were constantly breaking or pulling up trees that blocked their way and moving slowly forward. Long said in a deep voice, "It's a hill giant." Chapter 24 Preparations for War. After letting Kirelia and Videlpin return to the dragon's nest first, Long decided to investigate the movements of the group of hill giants alone. Using the cloud technique to ensure that he was more tightly covered, and using the power of illusion to make his blue scales blend more into the sky, Long turned his head and flew in the direction of the hill giants. In order to ensure safety, Long raised the flight altitude, but the powerful vision of dragons still allowed him to see the hill giants slowly moving on the ground. A total of 86 hill giants, and there are actually a group of wargs. Long narrowed his eyes and looked at a warg protected among the hill giants. On the warg sat a hill giant that was not much larger than a human. It was wearing a robe made of various animal skins, with a triceratops skull on its head, and holding a wooden staff with earth element crystals and various bone horns embedded on the top. Long's eyes were slightly solemn, a hill giant shaman. The difference between 86 hill giants and 86 hill giants plus a hill giant shaman is not simply one more hill giant. The role that the hill giant shamans protected by the hill giants can play is enough to make the hill giants reborn in battle. It is a very powerful threat. Fortunately, Long found this group of hill giants in advance, but this group of hill giants did not know that they had been targeted by a dangerous real dragon. If this group of hill giants continued to go south, Long could ignore them directly. If they settled nearby, just like the 3 hill giants before, there would be a battle between Long and them. Hill giants hate real dragons, and Long could not tolerate the existence of a threat nearby. Hill giant shaman Glengo closed his eyes, and his body rose and fell with the advance of the warg. He was meditating, but he could not enter the meditative state well. The noise made by the group of idiots around him was too loud. Damn it. All of you, be quiet. The frightened hill giants fell silent amid Grengo's intolerable roar. Growing up in the tribe, they dared not rebel against the shaman, their spiritual leader. Even though this shaman was exiled from the tribe like them, they were taught from birth to obey the orders of the leader and the shaman. It was finally quiet, but when Grengo thought about how he was squeezed out of the tribe by other shamans and was responsible for leading this group of young hill giants to settle in a place far away from the tribe, he was so angry that he could hardly control himself. Grengo clutched the scepter tightly in his hand, and his anger gradually subsided. Thinking positively, at least here, other hill giants must obey him, and no one will come to sneer at him. No one will laugh at his deformed body and laugh at his weird behavior, so the situation is not too bad. As they slowly moved forward, an open grassland valley appeared before the eyes of the hill giants. Grengo examined the surrounding terrain and found another valley at the edge of the valley. He immediately ordered caves to be built in the valley. The hill giants, relying on their affinity with the power of the earth, dug caves on the stone walls of the valley as easily as digging soil. But when they were halfway through digging, a roar of angry bulls suddenly came from the depths of the valley. Moo. A group of minotaurs with red eyes and wearing simple wooden armor made of wood and leather rushed out with huge stone axes, attacking the invaders who invaded their homes without saying anything. Damn it. Grengo stood up from the back of the wolf in anger and roared loudly, "Kill all these livestock." He waved the scepter in his hand and chanted the giant language with strange syllables. A layer of mud armor began to condense on the skin of all the hill giants, and their strength and speed increased a bit. The ground where the two sides fought also began to become muddy. Although the minotaurs were more than twice as many as the hill giants crushed the minotaurs, who were only 2 meters tall, in both size and strength. Coupled with the shaman spells of Grengo, the minotaurs, who had originally gained an advantage by numbers, gradually fell under the thick wooden sticks of the hill giants. A minotaur nearly 3 meters tall, wearing stone plate armor, and with blood-red hair tied into several braids, stepped on the hill giant's head, spurting out hot white air from his nostrils, pulling the heavy stone axe from the hill giant's neck, and scarlet blood splattered on the stone axe. Seeing his tribesmen die one by one, his eyes were filled with blood, but knowing that they could not defeat the enemy, he still issued an order to retreat. The hill giants chased the retreating minotaurs into the valley, but were blocked by the minotaurs with blood-red hair in the narrow valley. Although it was shorter than the hill giant, its strength was not inferior to that of the hill giant. It could even gain the upper hand against 2 hill giants alone. As it delayed them, the minotaurs in the valley fled to another exit of the valley with the females and cubs. After being delayed for so long, the furious Grengo had lost his patience and cursed, "Useless trash." Grengo raised his staff and pointed it at the stone wall beside him. 2 giant pythons made of rock immediately crawled out of the stone wall. The red-haired minotaur chopped the stone python with his stone axe, causing stone chips to fly, but he could not cut the stone python off. Instead, he was whipped by the tail whips of the 2 stone pythons, and the plate armor carved from the rock was cracked and shattered. The minotaur roared furiously, jumped up and chopped down the stone axe, chopping it on the head of a stone python. The stone axe broke under the huge force, but the head of the stone python was also chopped into pieces. The minotaur threw the axe handle in his hand, hitting the eye of a hill giant accurately, and deeply inserted it into its eye socket. The minotaur with bloodshot eyes turned around and ran wildly with the last bit of reason, relying on his familiarity with the terrain to gradually leave the hill giants behind. Long's wings tilted to block the wind, allowing the strong wind to hit the wing membrane. His speed slowed down rapidly, and then he landed heavily on the platform in front of the dragon's nest. Karelia, Videlpin, the Wren brothers and sisters, and a group of small leaders such as Kino, Goldfoot, Blue-Ears, and Scar all gathered in the dragon's nest. Seeing Long landing in the strong wind, except Karelia and Videlpin, all bowed their heads to greet Long. Before Long came back, Karelia and Videlpin announced their and Long's discovery. Everyone present knew that the opponent they might face was a powerful hill giant, but no one had the slightest fear in their eyes. Long N looked at his high-spirited subordinates with satisfaction and said in a deep voice, "Count all extraordinary warriors, the Kobold clan will increase the night patrol range, the Goblin clan will stop going out, and everyone should be ready to fight at any time." Long N paused for half a second and said, "Or take the initiative to attack. Tomorrow is the first time to be recommended. I'm excited, and I will prepare to update 3 times a day during the promotion period. Please read, collect, and recommend everyone. Wu-chan is on his knees here to thank you. Woo woo woo." Chapter 25. The Wild Horn Tribe. Great Master. The moonlight was dim, and Long N was still seizing the time to construct a few more 4th ring spells. Suddenly, Blue Ear emerged from the tunnel connected to the dragon's nest. The magic book floating in front of Long N snapped shut. "What's the matter?" Blue Ear said. The patrolling warriors found a large group of Minotaur sleeping in the wild. Some Minotaur smelled very bloody. It looked like they had just had a fight with something. Minotaur? Long N thought they were hill giants. What? Minotaur? Long N immediately thought of the bartender Old Haddo's joking warning. "Do you need me to introduce some tourist attractions? Go northwest out of the town. There is a Minotaur tribe in the valley over there that welcomes foreign tourists very much. They will even hang the heads of tourists on the wall northwest of Blackrock Town. It is really possible to run into the group of hill giants coming from the north. These two have bad tempers, so it is normal for them to fight. From this point of view, Minotaur has never been fought before. Did you alarm them?" "No, Great Master," Blue Ear said respectfully while lying on the ground. "When I found them, all the dog-headed men didn't come near me. You did a good job." Long N praised him with satisfaction. He was impressed by Blue Ear's intelligence. "Tell Goldfoot to bring all the dragon-veined dog-headed men, dragon singers and dog-headed warriors, and call Kino as well." Long N thought about it carefully, and then said, "By the way, send someone to inform Kurilia and Videlpin, the 2 real dragons who live on the top of the mountain next to them." "Yes, Master." The Minotaur with blood-red hair tied into braids leaned against a large rock at the outermost edge of the tribe, and couldn't sleep in pain. Its wrong judgment almost ruined the entire tribe. As the chief, it could block all invaders alone without hesitation, and buy time for its people to escape, but it didn't have the courage to face those uneasy and frightened eyes in the dim moonlight. Leaving the valley, where the tribe had settled for generations, too many females and cubs could not sleep peacefully. The sighs of worry and the muffled groans of the wounded when their wounds were pulled tortured its soul, making it more awake and more sad. "Moo. Who is it? Come out." The Tauran chief roared, awakening all the Taurans who were immersed in sleep or grief. There was a rustling sound in the dark woods, and all the male Taurans who could still move stood up suddenly. They clenched their weapons and glared at the dog-headed people emerging from the darkness. Taurans have always looked down on species that are too small, especially small creatures like dog-headed people who are generally less than 1 meter tall. They prefer to talk to those tall and strong creatures like them. But these dog-headed people in front of them seem to be different. They are larger in size, with thicker scales on their bodies, and the horns on their heads grow like real dragon horns, instead of 2 small protrusions like ordinary dog-headed people. The dangerous aura of the kobolds made the Minotaurs feel threatened. The chieftain took a deep breath. His tribe could no longer bear another risky battle, so he said, "Kobolds, explain your intentions." The chieftain stared at the small eyes of the kobold leader, Junjiro, and the two stood there in a daze. It was a bit awkward. They couldn't speak the same language. The somewhat annoyed chieftain raised the stone axe beside him. This weapon used by the tribe was too light for him, but if the kobolds on the opposite side had bad intentions, this stone axe would definitely hit the skulls of those small men. Suddenly, a strong wind came, and a huge shadow came from far away with the sound of wings stirring the strong wind, and then fell heavily to the ground, causing the earth to tremble. The strange-shaped shadow spread its wings, and the huge wingspan brought great pressure to all the Minotaurs. The shadow's slender neck lowered slightly, and the hideous black crown-shaped dragon horns reflected a cold light under the weak moonlight. Real dragon. The Minotaur chief, who stabilized his body in the shock, breathed heavily. He lowered his head slightly to express his respect for the real dragon. but he also held the stone axe more firmly, and his muscles were completely tense. The Minotaur chief said in a low voice, "Neither humble nor arrogant, honorable real dragon, your visit is an honor to the Crazy Horn tribe. May I ask why you are here?" It was another language that he couldn't understand. Fortunately, Long N had anticipated it and captured Ryan, or 3 good employee and translator, before leaving. After listening to Ryan's translation, Long N said, "This is my territory, Minotaurs. I should be the one questioning why you broke into my territory, not you asking about my purpose." The Minotaur chief was stunned. When did a real dragon come here? It remembered that there should be only some goblins and dog-headed people in this area, otherwise it would not have chosen to lead its people to migrate in this direction. Since this area has been occupied by the real dragon, they can only take a detour. The Tauran chieftain tried to be humble as much as possible so as not to anger the real dragon, but to be honest, he was not good at this. "Honorable real dragon, we didn't know that this place had become your territory, so we rashly entered. We will leave now, and hope to get your understanding." Long N shook his head and said, "There is no hurry. I'm more interested in your experience now. Tell me about your experience." Long N's commanding tone was directly translated into giant language by Ryan, without any modification. In fact, because of the language expression of giant language, the tone of this command was even more tough and overbearing. The Tauran chieftain took a deep breath to suppress his anger, and then said calmly, "A few months ago, 5 savage hill giants attacked my tribe, killed my people, and kidnapped our cubs. We eventually killed 2 of them, but let the other 3 escape. Today, the helpers called by the 3 hill giants attacked us again. Those stinking monsters were not the opponents of the Crazy Horns tribe, but they have an evil shaman." At this point, the Tauran chieftain, who was evoked with sad memories, squeezed the wooden handle of the stone axe and almost broke it. Long N roughly understood what happened. These Tauran really ran into the group of hill giants. The Tauran, who had long been enemies, fought with the hill giants, and then lost the fight, and fled with their entire tribe. But what the Tauran people didn't know was that the 3 hill giants who escaped at the beginning died in Long N's hands, and the group of hill giants who came later didn't know what happened before. If the Taurans did not take the initiative to attack, maybe the smart enough shaman would command the hill giants to move to another place to live instead of fighting with the Taurans. After all, there are only more than 80 hill giants in the tribe, and each death is a huge loss. Long N did not tell this to the Tauran chieftain. He was too lazy to explain. Besides, a Tauran tribe full of hatred for the hill giants would be the most beneficial to Long N. Not sure if it is recommended today, but rolling around to ask for votes and read it again. Exclamation mark. I hope everyone will comment and criticize more. This chapter will be more fun if it says more. Thank you. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.